things like infrastructure is something that we have to have a continuous look on. You have to have live data that tells you where they're propping up, where there are pit toilets. So in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be very excited to be announcing how we will be monitoring once this particular backlog is dealt with.
Talks continue between steel company ArcelorMittal SA and labor union NUMSA. This follows the company's decision to retrench 107 workers ahead of the festive season. NUMSA members have embarked on strike action last week, affecting some of the company's operations in Vanderbijlpark. Nothando Makudulela reports.
On Friday, the steel company approached the labor court on an urgent basis to interdict the ongoing strike at its coke plant. However, the court dismissed the application, citing that the strike action is protected. The two parties continue to engage with each other to resolve the protest action as well as the retrenchment issue. Nothando Makudulela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
In news further restrictions have been imposed on construction activity and vehicles in the Indian capital of Delhi to combat worsening air pollution. A blanket of toxic smog has covered the city of 30 million for the past week. The BBC's Anbarasan Ethrajan reports.
All diesel trucks except those carrying essential items have been banned from entering the Indian capital from Monday morning, and construction at public projects have been suspended. The measures were announced after an emergency meeting on Sunday evening to discuss the deteriorating air quality. Senior citizens, children and people with respiratory and cardiovascular ailments have been advised to stay indoors. The smog has been blamed on emissions from industries and vehicles and illegal farm fires in neighboring states.
Recapping the top story, some non-governmental organizations at the COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, have warned governments that when closing coal power stations, they should take into consideration job losses in that sector. I am Ondalambara for SAFM News. Headlines at 3:30.
Coming up in your sports this hour, 4 Springboks nominated for World Rugby Awards, and Bafana Bafana look to seal top spot in AFCON qualifiers. More details at 3:30.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.6 FM in Bloemfontein.
Outsurance definitely understands the nature of our business. Being properly insured is extremely important to the success of our business.
They come to the party very quickly, resolve things.
Action speak much louder than words. Outsurance have shown us nothing but action.
Switch to Business Outsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
Back-to-back Women's T20 World Cup runners-up, the Proteas face England. They both want to walk away from Buffalo Park with big smiles. What is summer without cricket? This is the first Women's T20 International Contest, where summer cricket comes alive. South Africa clashes with England on Sunday 24 November at 2 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and reports on various SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the
game. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Welcome to the National Pulse. My name is Ashraf Garda. It's been a weekend, as always, of incidences, of things happening. Lots to consider. Perhaps the one filled with the greatest irony has got to be that of the Miss Universe event, where you had a situation where the Miss South Africa representative to the Miss Universe, Mia Leroux, had to pull out the day before because of illness, mainly vertigo, I understand, which deals with balance or imbalance, and that's caused by inner ear problems, and that, for her, being someone who's deaf or hard of hearing, is completely related to her own issues, right? That's the one. And then you have the former Miss South Africa contestant, now representing Miss Nigeria, Chidima Adechina, who then contests Miss Universe and actually ends up second, the first runners-up. Oh, the irony, isn't it? I wonder if you have any opinions on that, whatever it may be. There are many more. You also know on the weekend we had the President Ramaphosa commenting on the issues of spaza shops selling foods that are poisonous and what that means, and immediate shutdown of those stores and a need to register or to re-register with sense of urgency. There's been developments around that, not just from them, but also from Operation Dudula, was preventing foreign nationals from registering spaza shops. So all of that just in a typical weekend. And there's more. You may be aware of the rumors regarding a significant member of the EFF, right, and what that means and where that goes. So we're talking about Dr. Imbuyiseni Ndlozi, right? So let's talk about many of those issues. Now, let me say first up for you, what for you today, right now, what moves the National Pulse? Give it a shot. Tell me what you think. 086 000 2032. And then you can WhatsApp us. You have two options. Text, voice note, 0614 104 107. And as per always, you can also post on social media. Tag SAFM Radio. Do tag me. Use the hashtag The National Pulse. You can also post on Facebook and tell us where you are. Wherever you may be listening to us around the country, around the world. I certainly would love to know. If you tell me, I'll give you a shout out. Right, let's get to the issue then of the significant leader within the EFF, Dr. Imbuyiseni Ndlozi. Now, there were stories over the weekend, in fact Saturday night, to say, one, he's been effectively kept out of an upcoming conference from the EFF or by the EFF. He can't attend, and the big question is why. I don't really know whether there's been an official confirmation from the EFF to say yes, that's the position, but it's certainly enough to have been covered by just about all mainstream media, newspapers as well as broadcast media. So let's find out what we know and what are the ramifications. Professor Dirk Coetzee with me, who's a political analyst based at UNISA. Professor Coetzee, appreciate your time. You are now connected to the National Pulse.
Yeah, thanks very much. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Right, first of all, what do you understand? I mean, since Saturday night's preview of what may come in, the Sunday papers broke of the, if I can call it suspension, I suppose, of Dr. Imbuyiseni Ndlozi from the conference of the EFF. What have you heard since then?
Well, good afternoon. Yes, I don't think we've heard much more. What appears to be the situation at the moment is that it looks like he has been barred from attending the National People's Assembly, which is in a bit less than a month from now, which is in normal terms, the national conference of the EFF, and where the election of the new leadership of the EFF will take place. But what has also happened in the past week, that what is called the Central Command Team, which is almost like the national executive of the EFF, that at a two-day meeting last week, that he didn't attend that, and there was no explanation why he was absent there. So it starts to look as if there's a consistency. It's not only that they say he cannot attend this elective conference of the EFF, but he's also being sidelined or from all activities within the EFF at present already. And that makes it a very bizarre situation.
Okay, and I mean, according to you, did the EFF actually confirm that position, that report, or have they denied it?
As far as I know, they haven't confirmed it. I also haven't seen anything to say that they denied it. I think what is at the moment the position is a very vague one to say why he must decide for himself to what his activities are within the EFF. But there's no real formal statement about it coming from the center of the EFF.
I mean, I do know in the one of the comments has been from their spokesperson suggesting that, we don't comment about individuals who don't attend. Many people don't attend. Even I don't attend. Some things we don't make a statement about it. But when someone as significant as Dr. Ndlozi, in this case here, does not attend, I mean, that is very, very different from a party political backbencher, isn't it?
Yes, that is indeed so. And it's not only about his attendance. It's certainly one of the possible contenders for the senior positions. It very much has been talked about as a possible successor for Floyd Shivambu as the deputy. And there was even some of the younger the members of the EFF, who is encouraging me to stand against Julius Malema for the position of president. He is a former national spokesperson of the EFF. He is one of the key members of parliament right from the beginning. So he is one of the most senior persons in the EFF.
Okay, so
and therefore one can expect that he can potentially stand for different positions.
All right, so let's play with what we know now. What we know is that it's been widespreadly reported that he's been barred, Dr. Ndlozi has been barred from the upcoming National People's Conference coming up in about a month's time. So it's been reported, right? And it's been reported by multiple sources. So if we play with that as correct, and I have to say if it's correct, okay, because there could well be a rebuttal on that, right? What then, how would you interpret that? The fact that he would be barred from a conference where he is a leading member of the EFF, one of the most visible figures of the EFF, and potentially, as you've mentioned, potentially a challenger for the position of deputy president, maybe even the president as well.
Yes, I think this last point that you mentioned is possibly the main threat for many persons within the EFF, including starting with Julius Malema, the president, but some others also. The name of Godred Garvey is mentioned very often now as the favorite candidate for the deputy's position. Now, if Dr. Ndlozi is standing against him, it will first of all lead to a contestation. And I think what the EFF wants is not to have any contestation. It's almost like in the earlier years of the ANC, where there's only one candidate per position. And I think they want this, given the internal dynamics in the EFF now, of many senior members leaving the EFF, and they have to consolidate itself again. They don't want to have any type of divisions. At the same time, he's seen as a possible contender, political contender, not only for a position, but as for the general political leadership within the EFF. He's very much popular and supported by the younger members of the EFF, and they are apparently pushing him very hard to become more directly involved in one of the senior positions.
Okay, so
and someone like Malema, for very obvious reasons, don't want to tolerate this.
All right, so if he is barred, I mean, the next question is, where does he go from here? I mean, do you just accept that, just have been barred from this conference, but I'll be back the next time round and we just carry on with life as normal? I'm suggesting that life can't continue as normal in his case. Do you agree?
Yes, for sure. And I think this makes life absolutely untenable for him. And if we hear an announcement that he's leaving the EFF, it will be understood by most people, I would argue.
And of course, you know, the obvious thing is, like, there's been a flight of members from other parties, particularly the EFF, to that other party called the MK Party. I mean, any possibility of that happening with Ndlozi?
That is certainly a possibility. You know, I think the dilemma for persons like Ndlozi is that there's very few options at the moment. The MK is almost the only option, and that's what we've seen now with Floyd Shivambu and with Darling Pufu and others, that they have gone there. I don't think it's the natural sort of political home for him, given that that's the culture, the political or the organizational culture of MK is very different. But as I said, I think this, for now, it is possibly the only option he has.
Now, here's the thing. Whether he leaves the EFF to join the MK Party or leaves the EFF to do whatever else he wants to do, even outside the political space, nobody's even throwing the name the ANC, by the way, into the hat there, right? Either way, if he's not part of the EFF, do I take it, would I be spot on saying that he severely weakens the EFF? And this doubly so coming on the back of Floyd Shivambu then not being part of the EFF any longer too?
Yes, now I think he represents a very specific constituency in the EFF, as I mentioned earlier on, especially the younger members of the EFF. You know, a very important component of the EFF, segment of the EFF, are students. They are highly successful on campuses in order to win SRC elections. And there are not so many members of the EFF anymore who, in a sense, are role models for them. And I think he is regarded as one of the few that's left. And without him, it will certainly open up the EFF for contestation by other political formations.
Do you see, lastly, is this a battle for survival for the EFF then?
I'm a bit hesitant to reach that point now already, because what we are seeing at the moment is sort of movement amongst the top leadership of the EFF. We don't know what is really happening on the ground in terms of its members and its general supporters also. We see some of the early signs, I would say, in public surveys of the Race Relations and of the Social Science Foundation. It is slightly negative for the EFF, but it is not a landslide away from them. So I think one has to watch this very closely, but not reach a conclusion already that this is the end of the EFF or that they are busy bleeding finally.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. Professor Dirk Coetzee, thank you for your time. Appreciate your insights there. And perhaps let me throw that to you, to the public, to wherever you may be around the country, around the world, cities, towns, dorpies, villages, whatever it is. What do you make of this latest issue around the EFF? Yes, there's been no official statement. Yes, we know that part. There hasn't been an actual denial, my understanding, either. But the fact that it's been reported widespreadly so over the weekend may well suggest that something's clearly happening there. At this point in time, it's not about him being removed, but actually being prevented from attending a very, very important conference. Surely, if that's the case, it has to mean so much. And the big question is, two things: where does he go from here? And number two, can the EFF do without him? Obviously, somebody listening in may say, of course they can do without him. They've got a plan like they can do without others. But you've now been losing 3, 4, 5 senior political figures, some to the MK, maybe others not so. But either way, they would be outside the EFF. So where does the EFF find some new emerging leaders that will attract the attention of the electorate nationwide with a local election coming up soon, but at the same time also convincing others, maybe like you and me, to say, hey, that's the party that you need to be supporting. It's a big challenge for the EFF. Let's get your thoughts. 0614 104 107. In fact, give me a one word to describe the state of the EFF right now. Just one word. The state of the EFF right now is what? 0614 104 107. I'll get your calls to 086 000 2032.
Festive season is around the corner. Tell to hooray! Unlike most, Paul, I don't sweat going home because I have a Nedbank Just Invest account. So I'll be up this festive season. No borrowing, guys. Even you, Mr. Voiceman.
Must be nice to be you, Mabel. Mara, you can also be like Mabel and earn up to 8.5% interest. Open yours via the Money app in under 2 minutes. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. Promo rates apply. Visit nedbank.co.za for more info.
Bafana are coming to Cape Town to play the final qualifier against South Sudan at the Cape Town Stadium on the 19th of November 2024 at 6 p.m. Come early, dressed to support Bafana for a chance to win prizes. Gates open at 3 p.m. and tickets start from 60 Rand for adults with special rates available at 30 Rand for children under 12. Scholars in uniform and students with student cards at all Ticket Pro outlets. If you can't make it to the stadium, catch the game live on SABC2 at 6 p.m. or visit sabcsport.com. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana on X and TikTok.
Our role must be to seek to build a better world.
SAFM invites you to our annual public lecture delivered by former Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor. The theme for the lecture is 30 Years of South African Freedom. Reimagining South Africa's democracy, achievements, challenges, and the road ahead in protecting our democratic gains. The lecture will take place on the 21st of November 2024 at the Birchwood Hotel and Conference Center. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
Today, I'm part of seeking to build a better South Africa.
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, so let's get your thoughts continuing on the state of the EFF in the light of huge speculation that Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi may well be on his way out. Well, he's certainly, the biggest speculation is that he's been barred from this upcoming conference in December. What does that tell you about the EFF? What's your one word to describe the state of the EFF right now? So two things still to talk about very, very soon, right? We'll be talking about the 140th anniversary of the Berlin Conference. If you know why Africa's been carved up the way it is, well, listen in for that one there that comes up around 20 to 4. But let's talk now about something that's very, very impending, and in terms of where South Africa is in the next few weeks and next year. We're talking about the G20 summit. So currently that summit is underway in Brazil, and it does mean various heads of states coming together. Significantly, South Africa will then take over the presidency for next year, so from now on, I think December into the whole of next year, including hosting the G20 summit. So what should we be looking out for? What are the implications thereof? Sophie Mokoena is the SABC News international editor. Sophie, good chatting as always. Hi.
Thank you, Ashraf.
Thank you. So firstly, just quick synopsis. What is the G20 and why is it important?
Well, G20 is a group of industrialized nations. You know that you have the G7, which is the main group, but you have the G20, where you have both the main industrialized nations who are members of the G7, but also with some of the developing countries, and countries such as South Africa, India, including China, are part of this group. Now, when you look at why it was formed, it was during the financial crisis in Asia, where members of, big countries agreed that they must form this group of 20 countries that would include your European Union, and now you have the AU, to ensure that they prepare better for challenges of the future in relation to the economy. And this group started as a group of finance ministers and the central bank governors or Reserve Bank governors to look at how to navigate the challenge at that time, but also in future how to avoid the economic crisis. But later it was upgraded to heads of state and government. And since it was upgraded to heads of state and government, it is now at times dealing with political global challenges. It is not only in relation to financial challenges and the economic challenges, but also the political challenges. A case in point, the current war in Ukraine, it has almost derailed lots and lots of meetings of the G20, where at times they can't even agree on a communique. And therefore, it is for that reason this group is so important. And you know that the UN chief doesn't miss the gathering, because this is where he's able to speak to both the developed countries and the developing countries in relation to the transformation of the financial system in the world.
Okay, so from a South African perspective now, so doubly important, one, they being part of the G20, but the second part, the point that I alluded to, they imminently now will take over the chairmanship or the chairpersonship of the G20. Tell me how significant that is.
It's quite important for South Africa to be part of this group. South Africa has been part of its inception during Beggie's time, during Trevor Manuel's time, and when Tito was the Reserve Bank governor. So South Africa has been there, unlike BRICS, where we joined later, even though that is very same concept of BRICS. South Africa has been part of the South-South and really pushing for strengthening of the South-South. So South Africa post-1994 has played a very important role in building other fora where you can engage to ensure that you have a just world, and not only relying on the old institutions that some of them are outdated. For example, your IMF, your World Bank, including the United Nations when you look at the Security Council. And therefore it is quite important. And this is a platform also to push for the needs of Africa and the developing nations. And that is why South Africa was at the forefront pushing to ensure that the AU is part of the G20 in the same way the European Union has a seat in the G20. And therefore, you cannot undermine South Africa. South Africa is the founding father of the G20.
Okay, so therefore, and I know now we talk at a time of significant political change. Even South Africa, for example, compared to before, the leadership of the country has changed significantly since May 29. We've got a change in the USA, as you know, and there's other political changes in other parts of the world. How does that impact then on the agenda of the G20? What gets put in and what gets taken out?
Yes, you know that powerful nations will always push for their own interest and the narrative. Now, having new leaders within the is likely going to change. For example, the new leaders from the developing nations will continue to push for transformation of these multilateral financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank that are really outdated when you look at how they are constituted, because after the Second World War, the intention with these financial multilateral institutions was to rebuild the economy of those countries that fought during the Second World War and defeated Hitler. So they were intending to rebuild, and therefore many resources, and say it's more of them. But you have now a different situation when you look at member states of the United Nations, and that is why a push to transform those institutions is quite important. And this can be only developing countries that can push for that, and South Africa can play a role with other developing nations with the support of countries such as China and Russia. Now, the other important issue is that,
very quickly,
politically, you are able to bring synergy when the big boys are fighting, as we see with the war in Ukraine.
Okay, and that's where you're going to leave it. Clearly, we'll have many more conversations about the G20 summit, not just the current one, but certainly when South Africa takes on the leadership of the G20 from December right through to the whole of next year. Sophie McQueen, thanks for your time, the SABC News International editor. Much appreciate your input. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 3:30.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the news headlines on SAFM, I am Onda Lambana, and a very good afternoon. Telecoms operator Telkom says it has concluded its first phase of job cuts. Last year, the company announced plans to trim its workforce by 1,800. Some non-governmental organizations at the COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, have warned governments that when closing coal power stations, they should take into consideration job losses in that sector. And the incoming Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune has threatened sanctions legislation against the International Criminal Court. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Eskom Pahleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In Bedfordview, the N3 southbound has a crash near Van Buren Road that's causing delays, and the N12 R24 westbound queuing traffic on both routes towards Giluli's interchange. In KZN, the N3 eastbound in Pietermaritzburg is queuing towards Market Road. The N2 northbound in Isipingo queuing towards the Joyner Road exit. The N3 eastbound has a crash reported at Pavilion Mall, and the N2 southbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. In Cape Town, the N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive southbound is slow moving at Voortrekker Road. The N1 outbound is queuing on the off-ramp to Joostenburg Vlakte. Kormeki Road is slow moving at Masipumelele, and Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, Toby, last week when we last spoke, you were at the Wanderers and things turned wrong. Let's talk rugby now instead.
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Well, 4 Springboks received recognition for their consistent performances during the 2024 season by being nominated for the World Rugby Awards. Nominated for the prestigious Men's 15th Player of the Year are South Africa's most capped player of the time, Eben Etzebeth, along with Cheslin Colby and Peter Steph du Toit, who is a former winner of the award. The Bok trio are up against Killen Doris of Ireland. Then Bok fly half Sasha Feinberg Mgomezulu was nominated along with Emmanuel Faye Waposa, Jamie Osborne and Wallace City for the Men's 15th Breakthrough Year of or Player of the Year award. Then in football, South Africa will look to seal top spot in Group K of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers when they host South Sudan for their final match that is set for Cape Town Stadium tomorrow at 6 p.m. South Africa booked their place at the next AFCON in the previous round of games with South Sudan's 3-2 win over Congo last week Thursday, handing both Bafana and Uganda a ticket to Morocco 2025. Now, Bafana then went on to defeat the Cranes 2-0 in Kampala the following day to leapfrog to the top of the group and guarantee that position with the win over South Sudan, and the mother city will be the objective tomorrow evening. Now, it's very important that they finish top of the standings because it will have additional benefit of giving Bafana a better seeding for the AFCON group stage draw. And just to give an update with regards to the tickets, 29,000 tickets have been sold so far for Bafana's clash against South Sudan at the DHL Stadium in Cape Town so far. And I just checked the capacity of that stadium. It is around 55,000 rands. So not rands, 55,000 people. And it would be interesting if tomorrow that stadium is filled to capacity. We'll have to wait and see with regards to that.
Let's hope it happens. I mean, you want that to happen, isn't it?
You do.
But the team's already qualified, and that can be a good news thing or a bad news thing, isn't it?
Bad news how?
Well, there's lack of needle in the game.
Oh, I get
there
you.
is, yeah.
No, but still, I still feel like just South Africans go to the stadium and just celebrate Bafana. In the meantime, former TS Galaxy coach Siad Ramovic has encouraged his successor Adnan Beganovic to be his own man. The Serbian shocked the football fraternity when he resigned on live TV earlier this month following a string of unhappy results in the Betway Premiership, including missing out on the N10-8 and Carling knockout. Ramovic already has a job at Young Africans but left behind words for his successor.
I can only say beautiful things about Adnan. He was a loyal guy until now. And you know that I didn't go to Raja because they wanted me to come alone. So I always say that it was not a loss not to go there. It was actually a win for my values, principles and loyalty. And now people will maybe say, but look, you didn't go because of them, but now he stays when you leave. But it's not like this because he asked me if this is okay with me. If not, he will not stay.
Finally, in golf, Rory McIlroy says that he is now looking to become the most successful European golfer in history. He was speaking after winning his 6th race to Dubai title at the Earth Course yesterday. It was McIlroy's second win of the year in Dubai after he was victorious in the Hero Dubai Desert Classic back in January to take his earnings from this year's DP World Tour to over 171 million rand. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Really should consider golf as a career. But anyway, let's move on. I didn't. Somebody else has options.
Are we ready for a real conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Whew, what a day. Time for that face mask. Leave the face mask on for 2 minutes. 2 minutes? That's not even enough time for it to work. I can't even send an email in 2 minutes or make a cup of coffee.
With Santam, 2 minutes is enough to insure your car online. When you're fully protected with the expert insurer, you're free to live in the moment, not in the worry. Santam. This is freedom. Santam is an authorized FSP, a licensed non-life insurer and controlling company for its group companies.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is back. After receiving hundreds of entries last year from South African writers of different ages and ethnic groups sharing their stories, now the time is yours. It's your story. You decide. SAFM invites all writers to explore the medium of sound, the theatre of the mind, and to create a 1-hour radio play in English. Get writing now and submit your play before the 3rd of February 2025 for a chance to win one of 3 large cash prizes. For more information, visit safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. We do not tolerate any kind of discrimination. Disability Awareness Month 2024, only on SAFM. 104 to 107 nationwide. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
Right, we've been counting down, remember, to the deadline of 24th of November. That's the time for you to recode your electricity, your prepaid meter, right? So a reminder from Eskom to you to do just that. And if you have not done so, remember that after 24th, you have a situation where there is no power. Now, to make it easier for you, Eskom itself has recoded all the meters. So what you need to be doing only is you need to get to an Eskom-approved electricity outlet, buy the credit token. It should all be fine, but if you still need help, the Eskom teams will be on standby to help you.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, I asked you about your one word to describe the state of the EFF as you understand it now. Now that we know that, well, speculation that Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi been barred from an upcoming conference, allegations around that. What do you make of it? One word, yes, or 2 words. EFF, critical but stable. Another one, Willie saying it's devastating. Let's get some further comments on this. I just want to pick out some of the voice notes because there's the whole... In fact, there's so many people who've picked up on that, all wanting to comment about how they see the state of the EFF.
Afternoon, Ashraf. The one word to describe this party at the moment is a joke from Profile in Soweto. Bye.
Okay, and here's another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. One word to describe the current state of affairs in the EFF is feeble. Ilimakuvele, Rotterdam. Bye-bye.
Okay, I wonder why feeble. Maybe we can have a conversation about that. Monday in Cape Town, go ahead. What's your point? Monday, hi.
Yes, Ashraf.
Yeah, go ahead. What's your thoughts?
One word for EFF, shambles. Second word is chaotic, or using the soccer jargon, it's in 6s and 7s.
Okay. Oh, my goodness. And all 3 versions are not very, very complimentary. Okay, got that. Monde, thanks for that. Well, keep it coming. I mean, let's get your one word to describe the state of the EFF, right? Certainly in terms of the leadership, there's been like a jettisoning of leadership almost every week now. You can't just say it's one of those things. Never mind the fact that they appear to have very, very good support at campus level. Is that enough? Clearly not, isn't it? Right, let's move on now to the United Kingdom. So this is significant. Do you know much about the Berlin Conference? Well, you should. It's that conference 140 years ago that effectively meant the carving up of Africa. Think about it as a jigsaw puzzle, and someone was able to carve up and create a puzzle out of an entire continent. So now there's the 140th anniversary of the Berlin Conference being observed by the Fatherland Group. So let's find out what they're all about and what that means with my guest Olu Alake, who's the CEO of the Africa Center. Olu, appreciate your time. You're now connected to the National Pulse.
Hello, good afternoon, and how are we all doing?
We're fine, but I think even as I talk to you about the Berlin Conference, my mind just wanders back to say, what if, right? What if there were no Berlin Conference? What would the state of Africa be like now?
That's a very interesting question, brother. So if we cast our minds back, if we can, or our imagination, to think about what Africa was before the Berlin Conference, and what we had then were our different systems of governance, our different political structures, which were working. They were working for us, so much so that it led to the kind of economic prosperity that attracted the Europeans to Africa in the first place. So we had a functioning system beyond the narrative that the Europeans used to justify their invasion of Africa, which effectively was what happened as a result of the Berlin Conference. We had our own self-governing infrastructures that had worked for centuries. We had our political and cultural systems that had been working. We had our religious systems that had been working. And was everything perfect? Of course not. But which society was perfect? The invading societies weren't perfect either. But they worked. They worked for us. So when we think about what Africa would have, or try to reimagine Africa without the Berlin Conference and the subsequent colonialism and the era of imperialism that it ushered in, then we would have an Africa that is very, very self-assertive. We'd have an Africa that is very, very confident in its own structures. We would have an Africa that was a lot of the things that it currently is not.
Okay, so I hear you. It's very, very challenging. So therefore, what then is the purpose of this coming together by the Fatherland Group around the 140th anniversary?
It's quite interesting. So the Africa Center is 60 years old this year, and it's been almost like a cultural embassy for Africa in the UK, in London in particular, over those 60 years. And it's always been a place for education, for connection, for advocacy for and on behalf of Africa. So it's Africa in the global north, and a representative forum for that. And we've had, it's always been a place for having these kind of very difficult and challenging discussions and debates since its formation. And those discussions and debates have always centered around what is the Africa that we ideally want to see? How do we showcase and platform African excellence? How do we ensure that, the things that we need to change in Africa are changed and the things that we need to maintain and share are shared? So in thinking about our 60th anniversary, we were thinking about what were the seminal moments in Africa's history that are also have big anniversaries this year, and the Berlin Conference was one of them. So in speaking to my brothers at the Fatherland Group, they were also planning an event, a conference next November. Okay. So the 140th anniversary of the commencement of the Berlin Conference was last Friday. The conference actually concluded on February 26th. 1885, so we'll be commencing a program of activities from then at the Africa Center. But then joining with the Fatherland Group to ensure that there's a continuum of activity, conversation, and thought leadership around what difference did the Berlin Conference actually make to us? What have we lost, and how do we regain that?
And do I take it on the basis of what you've said? It's less about lamenting, because one can easily lament, and maybe rightfully so, but it's less about lamenting, but more about the point you just made, reimagining the Africa of today and the future. That means galvanizing, maybe understanding the pain, but galvanizing going forward. Is that how you see it as well?
Yes, very much so. It's not so much about lamentation, it's about education, because I'm very conscious of the fact that probably 75%, maybe higher, given how little importance many African countries actually place on history in the education curriculum. Probably about 75-80% of the population has no idea what the Berlin Conference was actually all about and what difference it has made to Africa, which means that many of us don't actually understand how the countries that we all hold so dear, those borders that we are all so protective of, actually came into being. And all the problems that we have around those political structures and the economic implications that it has are very, very important for us to understand. But then, so that's the past and the present. But also we then need to think about, so that's the last 140 years. This is now. What is the next 140 years going to look like for Africa? How are we as Africans going to help to forge and shape and ensure and maintain that new vision of Africa that we need to create? And that's what the main point of the conversation is.
And as part of that conversation, as you reimagine Africa, do I take it that returning to the pre-Berlin conference borders are out of the question now?
I wouldn't put anything out of the question. I mean, there are issues of practicalities, obviously, but it needs to be, when we say reimagine Africa, that's really what it needs to be. We also need to understand as well that Africa, even in 1884, was not the same Africa as in 1784. Borders had changed and shifted, people had moved around, different political developments had happened, which had resulted in very, very different infrastructures on the continent. So nothing has ever really been that fixed, in terms of Africa's history. The Berlin Conference was a disruption. It was a major disruption in the development of Africa politically, economically, culturally, and socially. And the reimagination has got to be, if there had been no Berlin, what would the continuum have been for us, given how we were developing as a people, as a set of people back then till today? And what does that need to look like 140 years from now?
And maybe that leads me to the last thing, which is really important, which is if we can't go back to whatever the borders were 140 years ago, and I get that because of logistical issues. One thing then, however, in coming together, under Africa Center or the Fatherland Group collectively, or maybe the AU, what does Africa as a continent need to be doing now to, and I use the word regain, its position, its preeminent position of maybe 200 years ago? What does it need to be doing, and does anything suggest that we are on track?
The main thing we need to do, well, I'll categorize them very broadly as educational, economic, and political. Educationally, it's very, very important that we get that sense of appreciation and understanding of history back. And that needs to not just be a matter for the formal educational curriculum, but also the informal channels that we have for education as well. We live in a time where there has not been more access to information readily available to practically anybody on the planet. We need to look to see how collectively we can utilize those channels to ensure that there is a re-education of ourselves, or an education for those who don't know. Then culturally as well, there needs to be a cultural renaissance, and that is part of what we're doing here today and what you are all about as well, and what we are about as an organization. There needs to be that sense of appreciation of the cultures of Africa in a new way that is not through the gaze of the colonial or imperialist structure that we have all grown up with and have become far too comfortable with. And then politically, yes, that's where the AU comes in, but that's where we come in as well. and how we understand and how we articulate amongst ourselves.
I have a sense we'll have many more conversations, and we should be having many more conversations around this. So maybe this is the opening salvo, Olu Alake, about creating an awareness around Africa around the time of the Berlin Conference, and where does it go to in the future. The CEO of the Africa Center, Olu Alake, appreciate your time, your insights here on the National Pulse.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, let's get to many of your thoughts. By the way, that conversation with Olu Olake regarding the African continent and the Berlin Conference, what did you take out of it? Tell me what you think. What do you think about what he said about Africa those years, 140 years ago, and now, and certainly his own thoughts and challenges with regard to the way forward. Lots of people commenting on that one word to describe the state of the EFF right now.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. One word to describe the current state of affairs in the EFF is feeble. Ilimakuvele, Rotterdam. Bye-bye.
Okay, feeble. I've heard that one before.
EFF has become the next cope. I don't see EFF coping in the next election. Dr. Ndlozi is very important for the EFF and for whatever political party that he signs up for. So I think this is the last nail to the coffin for the EFF. The sponsor shop is about to close. It looks like it's a trend for all parties that come from the ANC to dismantle like this or to implode like this.
Well, got that. By the way, talking about the EFF on the one hand and regarding the MK party, well, political analyst Tessa Dooms tweeted over the weekend saying the MK is the future of progressive politics in South Africa. So that comes up around 5:10. Don't miss that, right? That doesn't mean she's supporting them. She's saying they're the future of progressive politics. So listen to what she says about that when we chat to her later on.
Hi, how's it, Ashraf? This is Sabata from Devon. One word to describe what's going on in EFF, or to describe EFF at this moment: disarray.
There we are. One word: disarray. Anybody have any complimentary one words about the EFF? I can't believe we're even speaking about them in this way. It's never been done before. Not 6 months ago. Not a year ago. No.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and your team. Flores here from the Western Cape. Tumbling. The word tumbling comes to my mind when it comes to the EFF. It's slowly falling apart. And let me tell you, it will take a strong person to hold his chin up. So Julius has his work cut out for him. Yeah, let's see if he will maintain his strong facade. But yeah, tumbling comes to mind. Have a good job. Bye-bye.
Is it a facade, or is it exactly how you see it right now?
Malema's fall down is because of his leadership. His leadership is an iron leadership, rather, just like the former Colombian President Pinochet and the former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. Those two were megalomaniac, you see. That's really tyrannical, and it doesn't assist Malema at all, that kind of behavior or rulership. Thanks to Ilya Nkuma.
Okay, and there's another, and it links to not the EFF, but the IMF.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
I don't know why African leaders are crying about institutions like the World Bank and the IMF needing to change their policy towards how they lend towards the developing world. There are other means towards development other than borrowing from the IMF and the World Bank, and that could be like increasing your savings in the country as well as cutting your national debt or even subsidizing your higher education institutions to actually foster industrialization in the country. You don't need the IMF and the World Bank because those institutions are going to force you to implement their economic policies which are destructive. Africa today is underdeveloped because of the so-called structural adjustment programs of the IMF. Thanks, Lionel Whitbank.
Well, Lionel, I hear you, IMF now, and before that, I mean, do you see the cradle of all that happened around the Berlin conference or not? By the way, any comments besides the EFF's one word? We're going to chat to a representative from Operation Dudula. They, in fact, are preventing foreign nationals from registering their spaza shops today. In fact, we'll talk about that just now. But any comments about the Miss Universe? Certainly from the irony, the fact that the Miss South Africa, Mia Leroux, had to withdraw because of illnesses, vertigo, I understand. And then the runners-up, the former Miss South Africa contestant, that is Chidima Adeshima, went to Nigeria and then ended up as the runners-up in the overall Miss Universe competition. Anything you want to tell me about that? I certainly want to know. By the way, some tweets around the whole EFF story, and it came through from Sinawa Tambo, right, tweeting, saying, the Sunday World refers to its sources as deep throats or moles. I would be ashamed of myself if I was a mole of the anti-EFF propaganda. Silent when the movement is under attack, but vocal in corners to undermine the public standing of the party. And then saying we have all been disciplined around it. Our organization cannot be dragged through the mud daily in your name, and you keep quiet as if you have no capacity to talk. Sincere silence at times becomes complicity. I love him too, but I love the EFF more. Referring to, there's a tweet from Wahida Abid responding to that, saying, Sinawo, please take a deep breath. It is not Mbuyiseni Ndlozi who told the media whatever you are insinuating. Sit down, Booty. Defend the organization without insulting and throwing dirty mud at our favorite doctor. If you have a problem, call Ndlozi and sort it out. But isn't that the point, isn't it? Call Ndlozi and sort it out. Just WhatsApp him, man. Like, are you coming or you're not coming? Or please don't come and tell us exactly what it is. I tell you what, it is, and that would apply to the ANC, for example, a senior member, or even the DA. I think we'd be talking about it all afternoon. We would be talking about it. So why would we not talk about it now, isn't it? Let's get the news. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Ondela Imbana.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories at 4. Telkom concludes the first phase of job retrenchments, and Minister Gwahube on a mission to eradicate pit toilets. For SAFM News, I am Ondilambana, and a very good afternoon. Telecoms operator Telkom says it has concluded its first phase of job cuts. Last year, the company announced plans to trim its workforce by 1,800. Telkom announced its results for the 6 months ended 30th September. It reported strong growth in revenue, up 1.9% to 21 billion rand, driven by strong fiber and growth in mobile revenue. Group CEO Sirame Tauk-Wong says the results build on the progress made in the previous year. He says they're focusing on reducing operational costs and improving the revenue mix.
We have embarked on a journey as One Telkom to ensure that we drive a key reshaping of BCX. The first phase of it was the Section 189. Unfortunate, but it is part of restructuring and reshaping BCX to ensure that we focus on your higher margin and lower cost businesses. And that first phase has been executed with speed.
Some non-governmental organizations at the COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, have warned governments that when closing coal power stations, they should take into consideration job losses in that sector. The NPOs say they support the idea of moving away from the use of fossil fuels, but that should not economically affect communities who rely on these jobs for survival. Chairperson of Sub-Saharan Energy Network, Mbulaheni Mbodi, says the effects which came with the closure of the Komati power station in Mpumalanga should be avoided.
It is not clear what is the net loss or what is the net gain. You need to know what are the jobs that we are losing versus what we are receiving. If you close a power station and you open a solar power station, you are not going to have as much people there. So if you close, like the Komati was closed, it's no way any solar power station can be able to give you the same numbers.
Basic Education Minister Sivua Kwahube says the backlog in getting rid of pit toilets at schools will be eradicated by next year. She was speaking at an event where 22 low-cost flush toilets have been built at the Deda Primary School in the deep rural Ozwatini area between Otongati and Waterberg in KwaZulu-Natal. These toilets replace 6 pit toilets that 700 learners have been using for years now. The new toilets were built at a cost of just under 1 million rand by NGO Breadline Africa. Kwahube says government has eliminated about 92% of the pit toilet backlog at about 4,000 schools countrywide.
However, in the next couple of weeks, we will be making an announcement about a monitoring tool that we want to use, because it's not enough to simply say you've cleared the backlog. Things like infrastructure is something that we have to have a continuous look on. You have to have live data that tells you where they're propping up, where there are pit toilets. So in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be very excited to be announcing how we will be monitoring once this particular backlog is dealt with.
Meanwhile, Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Dean Macpherson says his department will be working with the Department of Basic Education as well as other spheres of government, the private sector and civil society to use money for building toilets more effectively.
And it became very clear to us that the private sector has a big role to play in helping us to remove this national blemish once and for all. And so we have committed our department to doing everything that we can in conjunction with the Department of Basic Education to declare war on pit toilets once and for all and to remove them from our landscape.
In the international news, the incoming Republican Senate Majority Leader John Chun has threatened to legislate sanctions against the International Criminal Court. That's if it does not reverse the effort to seek arrest warrants against Israeli officials over their conduct of the war in Gaza. Chun has called the ICC prosecutors' actions outrageous and unlawful. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports.
Senator Thune wants the current Majority Leader, Democrat Chuck Schumer, to bring for a vote to the Senate floor legislation that would sanction the ICC, or vowing to do so when he takes over the chamber in January. The House of Representatives passed legislation in June to sanction the Hague-based court and its officials, including prosecutor Karim Khan, due to his seeking arrest warrants for Israeli officials over the war in Gaza. He requested arrest warrants from the ICC pre-trial chamber in May, accusing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant of war crimes and crimes against humanity. The US believes the ICC has no jurisdiction.
Recapping the top story, telecoms operator Telkom says it has concluded its first phase of job cuts. Last year, the company announced plans to trim its workforce by 1,800. I am Ondalambana for SAFM News. Headlines at 4:30.
And coming up in your sports, the South Keegan Dolly joins Tears Galaxy and Rafa Nadal, more focused on helping Spain win Davis Cup than his retirement. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Santon Drive westbound is slow moving towards Winnie Mandela Drive. Eskempatleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In Bedfordview, the N3 southbound has a crash reported near Van Buren Road, and the N12 R24 westbound has queuing traffic reported on both routes towards Giluli's interchange. In KZN, the N3 eastbound in Pietermaritzburg is queuing towards Market Road. The M13 eastbound in Kloof has a crash reported near the Village Road exit. The N3 eastbound has a crash at Pavilion Mall and Umgeni Road westbound, slow moving through Springfield Park. In Mpumalanga, on the N4 in Komatipoort at the Limpopo border post, check before travel to confirm border operations due to unrest on the Mozambique side. The N4 in Waterval-Boven has a truck crash reported between Malaga Hotel and Malati Chalets with stop-go controls at the scene. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound is slow moving towards Krumbum Road exit, the M3 southbound slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend, the M7 Jakes Hadwell Drive southbound is queuing towards the R300 highway, and the N1 outbound slow moving towards Yeptiaga Avenue. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Polokwane. Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
My name is Alan. I'm 71 years of age and I live in Douglasdale. I'm paying 554 Rand a month for my 2022 Nissan Magnite.
Want a car insurance premium that'll blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote. It's quick, it's easy, and it could save you hundreds of rands every month. Here's Amy.
To anyone who has not reached out to OUTsurance, what are you doing? Reach out today.
Blow your mind, not your paycheck. SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself why OUTsurance was voted Best Car Insurer 2023 by the Star and Pretoria newsreaders. Here's Yusuf.
That just shows that OUTsurance is top of the tops when it comes to insurers.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. OUTsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
MasterChef's salty voiceover guide to mispronunciation. Today's word, finale. Origin, Italian. Pronunciation, finale. Meaning the last part of a series, commonly mispronounced as
final.
As if you are discussing your matric results. Example.
I can't wait to see the final results of MasterChef.
If you insist on saying final, it's okay. Watch the grand finale of final on November 23, 8:30 on S3. MasterChef, things are about to get salty.
Our role must be to seek to build a better world.
SAFM invites you to our annual public lecture, delivered by former Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor. The theme for the lecture is 30 Years of South African Freedom, reimagining South Africa's democracy, achievements, challenges, and the road ahead in protecting our democratic gains. The lecture will take place on the 21st of November 2024 at the Birchwood Hotel and Conference Center. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
Today, I'm part of seeking to build a better South Africa.
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Certainly one of the biggest issues that has moved the National Pulse over the last few weeks has been the issue of the spaza shops and the fact that, you know, some of them are being operated for legally, others not so. But beyond that has been the issue of, you know, poisoned foods being sold by some of them and the implications thereof. And as you know, certainly from the Gauteng Education Department, a few days ago, they shut down all the stores around supporting the schools. And then you had the president of the country announcing to the nation on Friday about further investigations into all those stories, but the need for certainly the spaza shops to be registered to trade, something that they haven't been doing up to now, and something that apparently hasn't been done up to now. It's all very strange. Now, Let's take it a step further. Today, members of Operation Dudula gathered at the Civic Centre in Jabulani. Well, why were they there? I understand their plan was to stop or to block foreign nationals from registering their spaza shops. They claim that these foreign nationals are stealing businesses from locals. Now, spaza shop owners are trying to register their businesses as part of government intervention to fight against the recent spate of food poisoning cases. We know that, right? So, it's complex. Is that really the plan of Operation Dudula? It means even foreign nationals who are documented, who simply need to register to be able to trade, are we saying that they can't trade? We're not going to allow it? Let's find out exactly what the plan is and the vision of Zandile Dabula, representing Operation Dudula. Zandile is the president thereof. Good connecting with you, Zandile. Thanks for chatting to us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, and to the listeners at home. Thank you so much for having us today.
Right, thank you. So, clarify this. What happened today?
So today was just a demonstration of how South Africans are heartful, I must say. After the president's announcement that he's giving everyone 21 days to make sure that they comply in order for them to trade in the spaza shop industry, we then find it very disappointing that we have a president that chooses to prioritize foreigners over South Africans. I mean, we have less South Africans who have occupied this industry, and yet you still want to put 500 million towards renovating these spaza shops. Are we then saying that this 5 million is going to be spent on foreign nationals? But not just that. We have our own few South Africans who still want to continue. We saw them in queues today, waiting in long queues to register their businesses and make sure that they have permits. But what we will not allow is to have foreigners who will take over, because already the township economy in the townships especially is all in the hands of foreigners. So that cannot be correct. So what we are saying is that we don't, now that the president is saying that he's giving everybody 21 days, it must be a chance for South Africans to take advantage of this process. Foreign nationals must stay out of this. They must just not trade in our townships. I mean, this is just a mere spaza shop. You can even hear the name. It's a spaza. Spaza means it's something that's almost not real, if I can say. So why is it being occupied by foreign nationals? I mean, we've got laws in this country. If you want to trade and you are foreign nationals, you're more than welcome to do so, as long as you're documented and also invest with a minimum of 5 million. So you can't have a 5 million rand and want to own a spaza shop. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, so you say, so if I hear you correctly, a foreign national who's documented, I'm not talking about those who are undocumented, that's another whole conversation completely, okay?
Sure.
But a foreign national who's documented, who's got one spaza shop, or maybe 10 spaza shops, because I know the name spaza, but let's say you can have a chain group of spaza shops in different parts of the country, so you can own 10 of them. You're saying that cannot be allowed?
No. They need to be reserved for South Africans because it's a local thing. It's something that's just, if you own a spaza shop, you're supposed to be servicing about just one block in your area and not many other spaza shops. That's why it needs to be reserved for our own locals. So even if you're documented, we are saying that spaza shops must be reserved for South Africans only.
Okay, so one is your opinion, and if you just expressed it, and that's fine, because clearly there'll be others listening who have a different opinion, right? Another is taking that opinion and taking that position and put it into practice. So have I got it correct that in fact you prevented foreign nationals today from registering their business?
Yes, it is, I must say. We had residents of Soweto there who said that they do. If there's a clip, I'm sure you would have seen it. If not, we'll try and make sure that it do rounds of an elderly lady who said, we fought in the apartheid days. We can't be fighting again with foreign nationals. So foreign nationals cannot take over everything in this country. I mean, our country is a mess. Buildings are liquidating. We don't no longer have proper towns and all that. So it can't continue like this. Our own president, when he was doing his announcement, we had thought that he would at least give us, like we've always asked, that he needs to declare a state of an emergency when it comes to the immigration crisis, but not. He chooses to still side with foreign nationals. So he is not for us, but rather for foreign national. I mean, in the past week, we have all seen that he had closed down all the informal traders that are trading at schools when we know that most of them are South Africans. But he couldn't do that when it comes to these foreign-owned spaza shops, when it is evident that they're producing fake goods. And just now in Mfuleni, we had a butchery that produces wors from dog meat. What more does the president need to see so that he can see that we're in a crisis as South Africans?
Now, obviously, somebody who's producing meat from dog meat, I mean, that cannot be allowed no matter what. We know that, right? But people, and again, like you get spaza shop owners, South Africans who do a great job, and some of them don't do a great job. The same may well be with foreign nationals. Do we lump all foreign nationals in the same breath and say, hold it, all of them would be doing things that are illegal and selling foods that are harmful to us?
Listen, we don't know where they're getting their food from. We've seen how they manufacture their own products, and it's just them. Everywhere where you go, you find fake products being manufactured. It's your Somalians, Bangladesh, Pakistan. It's just that national that are owning this whole cycle of the spaza shop. So we don't want them. They must move away from our countries because food security, I mean, we need to make sure that people consume food that is good for consumption. But currently it's not happening because even their warehouse, they are producing their own fake food. So they must just move from this cycle and let South Africans trade.
In trying to stop them today, explain how did you stop them? What did you actually do?
So, I mean, as you know, that they would feel intimidated as soon as they see Operation Dudula. But some tried their luck, but they've been chased away by obviously the community and the members of Operation Dudula to say, you are not coming inside, because we know that once they're inside, they will be assisted. And yet we're asking ourselves that if they go inside, remember, if you're going to get a permit, you need your proof of residence, you need a document, you need a compliance of your business. But town planning as well doesn't just take a day. How did they get approved plans for the property that they will be
I hear you. What did we're gonna have to move on very quickly. What did the police say about this? You know, when you're stopping them physically.
I must tell you that we received a lot of support. People are just not happy with the statement that Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa has uttered. People are just angry, and people are saying that they no longer want this power.
Okay, I hear that's people, but what did the police officers do? Because what I'm getting at is, I know what your opinion is, and it's been well documented, but you also can't be government. You can't take the law into your own hands, can you?
Yeah, that's the reason why we had enforcers today. They were there, and we also explained to them that we are not fighting, we are not doing anything unlawful, but we are saying that this needs to be reserved for South Africans. And I'm happy.
But if you're preventing them, aren't you doing something unlawful?
Not really. I mean, if our own president cannot protect us from these people, then something needs. I mean, we are the people. We are the government of the day.
Okay. So, did the police service? Did anybody stop you from you stopping the foreign nationals today?
No, they couldn't stop us because it wasn't violent. We just said that you are not coming in, and then they left. All of them just left. So police cannot even stop us because they can't keep feeding us something that we don't want. We no longer want foreigners to occupy spaza shops in our township, and it's just that. And the whole country, I must tell you, if you listen to the social media responses and all that, people just do not want.
Okay, I hear you, and you know, and I know social media doesn't represent the whole country, but I certainly get your points. Zandile Dabula, the president of Operation Dudula. I can tell you now, the lines are buzzing. People have strong views on the strong views of Operation Dudula. Do you concur with those views, or do you find that they're wrong, they're distasteful, they're something that you should not be part of, or do you actually have a sense that, hey, they're absolutely spot on, that they actually have a point, that government's incapable of doing this themselves, that if you're a foreign national and you have your own business, do that, but it needs to be a 5 million rand investment, not a 50,000 rand spaza shop. Do they have a point? Well, I have my point. What's yours?
The Northwest Provincial Legislature Standing Committee on Oversight of Northwest Provincial Legislature, chaired by Honorable Michael Groenewald, will be holding public hearings on the Public Service Amendment Bill 2023 and Public Administration Management Amendment Bill 2023 on the 23rd of November 2024 in the Northwest Legislature Auditorium in Mahikeng, Banquet Hall in Potchefstroom, Toulita Hall in Ganyesa, and Ben Marie Hall in Rustenburg at 10 in the morning.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, from one big issue that to a large degree impacts on foreign nationals and therefore impacts on South Africans. Well, here's another one, the issue of the Stilfontein mine update. It seems like every day one of the key words, buzzwords of what we do is understanding what moves the National Pulse has got to be foreign nationals. It's just true. I'm not saying good or bad, I'm saying it's true. Now, an update on that, we know that President Ramaphosa made a point about wanting law enforcement officers to tread carefully when undertaking the mission to rescue miners from underground in Stilfontein in the northwest, right? Remember, in his weekly newsletter today, in fact, does it every Monday, the president said materials used by miners were dangerous and police needed to be cautious. Now, remember, linked to that is a position that certain forms of rescue has to be put in place and they should be allowed. Let's find out exactly what Tembile Botman feels about it. He's a Stilfontein community leader. We chatted to him a few days ago, remember. Tembile, I appreciate your time. You connected to the National Pulse.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. What do you understand since we last chatted in terms of the developments that have taken place? A miner or two have died. There's been also now this call that, in fact, food now can be sent down to these trapped miners to give them some form of relief or the other. And anything more you can tell us and what you feel?
Listen, we just came out of the meeting of the organizing team that was left by the minister. And the meeting is chaired by the MSC of Community Safety, Vessel Murray. So in the meeting we've agreed that the rescue team will resume its plan to send help that will help people resurface underground. And the plan, it looks like it will start tomorrow. We are not sure, but the plan is that they might start tomorrow.
Okay, well, what do you feel about it? I mean, when we spoke the other day, I have a sense that you were partisan towards the miners and you could understand their position.
The truth is that I still feel that the MEC and other people, they are downplaying this because we've been on site. We see what is happening. The numbers that are almost been saved, 1,100 and something, it is off an initiative by the community, from Margaret to Shaft 11, including the people that are saved there. And we are saying as community, we'll be comfortable knowing that the plan in place will be faster than what we've been doing. And we are welcoming it, by the way. We are saying let them be fast. And in the meantime...
No, but wait, you're saying different things here. When you're saying they are downplaying it, who's downplaying it? And give me an example of what you mean by that.
What I mean about downplaying it is that the rescue team that is saying they will work there, it means they must go and clear for 2 days. And as they clear for 2 days, they must start building whatever cage that will go and fetch people. And they said roughly it's about 3 to 4 days. And then start the operation of saving people, just depending on the number that they are going to fetch there. Now, when I say they are downplaying it, there is no plan that says, maybe let's send the essential, let's send medication that will sustain them. In the meantime, this plan is being executed.
So I don't understand where the downplay comes in. I mean, all I understand is, in fact, some sort of foods have been allowed. At the same time, even today, the president's saying some of them are dangerously armed. That's the president talking.
That still needs to be proven. Because the people that we've been saving, they've been coming out and they've been saying people that are underground are willing to come out. So what they are saying, as we've been rescuing them, including us seeing the condition that they come in, that's the information that give us the right to say these people are sick. Some of them have been admitted in the hospital. That's the proof. And don't get us wrong here. We are saying we must just save life, and the law must take its course.
I understand from some people, and I've heard many reports, that in fact many of the communities around Stilfontein are rather partisan towards the miners, and it could well even be people like yourself too, because there's a clear relationship and benefit from the work of the miners, legal or illegal, in the past. So that means between the miners and the community, for whatever the reasons has been, they've come to a situation now, it's win-win. The community needs the miners to go about and doing their mining, legal or not. I mean, do you agree?
The community needs government to regulate it. Me personally, I've been involved into making sure that I speak to DMRE. That's what we need. And I agree that this is a community that is distressed after the mining activities that happened in this community. And the MEC, for example, and the general of the province, they need to familiarize themselves with the act of DMRE. See, the other thing, as we are here, these things are happening, DMRE is silent. The minister said nothing of DMRE. But we all have or own ourselves a conversation to say, we have this situation and we want to deal with this situation for long term.
Okay.
Short term is that let's take them, let's remove them from underground. And after that, the conversation must be clear. How do we make sure that communities are going there to apply for permits and to make sure that they are regulated? Because if everybody like now saying they must come out, there's criminality on it, it surprises us that when we rescued them, they just go to the police station and be cleared, they go home.
So, okay, lastly, are you sympathetic to the cause of the miners, or do you agree with what many others are saying, that no matter what the situation is, they cannot trade in mining illegally, they cannot mine illegally, and they certainly can't carry the type of dangerous weapons that many people have been saying they do carry?
No, exactly. I'm not saying anyone must carry weapons. Crime is crime. I'm not here for crime. And I'm also saying you cannot mine illegal. I'm also considerate of the situation where I live, how it is. The unemployment rate, the closure of mines, the remaining of the miners that were brought by the system in our township, the underdevelopment of our township. At the same breath, I'm saying it is important that the government must, by any chance, make sure they speed up the process of artisanal mining, regulating this, so as the government can also benefit in the economy of this operation.
Well, let's leave it at that. I think, there are so many issues the government has to speed up on, and I'll agree with you. There are hundreds of issues around the country that affects communities, large and small, mining communities and others have not been resolved, and now all these things appear to be coming to the fore like every second day. And therefore, as I talk to you, if your pulse is racing, I can completely understand that. For 30 years, the news headlines with Ondela Mbana.
Thank you, Ashraf. News headlines at 4:30. DA Provincial Deputy Leader in the Western Cape, Jordan Hill-Lewis, says the party will explore all options, including litigation, to mount pressure against Eskom's application to NERSA to approve a 36% electricity price hike from April next year. Telecoms operator Telkom says it has concluded its first phase of job cuts. Last year, the company announced plans to trim its workforce by 1,800. Telkom announced its result for the 6 months ended 30 September. Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Dr. Dion George, says he hopes the G20 in Brazil will also discuss climate change as it affects developing countries. He says developed economies must be transparent in terms of funds given to developing nations. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Rose.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The M1 northbound in Houghton Estate has a crash reported after Houghton Drive exit. In Fourways, Cedar Road has a crash reported near Uranium Street, and Witkoppen Road westbound has a crash reported near Monte Cassino Boulevard. In KZN, Maiden Road has truck congestion reported in the Congela area. The N3 eastbound in Pietermaritzburg is queuing towards Market Road, and the N3 eastbound has a crash reported at Pavilion Mall. In Mpumalanga, the N4 in Komatipoort at the Limpopo border post, please do check before travel to confirm border operations due to unrest on the Mozambique side. And on the N4 in Waterval-Boven, there's truck rush reported between Malaga Hotel and Malati Chalets. Stop-go controls at the scene. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound slow moving towards Okavango Road exit, Baden-Powell Drive eastbound queuing towards Strandfontein Road. Main Road northbound is queuing through Fishhoek and Cork Bay, and Victoria Road both ways slow moving through Camps Bay. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumin Khapele.
Okay, Chumi, give me some news of a significant football transfer.
Well, TS Galaxy have announced the signing of former Kaizer Chiefs midfielder Keegan Dolly. Dolly has been a free agent since leaving Chiefs at the end of last season, and he has signed a one-year contract with the option for another at the club, which he will hope that is going to turn a new page with the side who are desperately in need of some creativity and goals as they sit bottom of the PSL table on 2 points after losing 4 while drawing 2 of their opening 6 matches of the season. Meanwhile, Senegal will look to close out their successful 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualification campaign in style when they host Burundi in their last Group L match that is set for Dakar tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Senegal secured qualification last month already and have since further entrenched their status with a 1-0 away win over Burkina Faso last Thursday evening. This is courtesy of a late goal from Habib Diarra. Now, the result is a further feather in the cap of interim coach Pape Thiaw, who has overseen 3 successive wins since taking over as head coach. Elsewhere, Tottenham midfielder Rodrigo Benteke has been banned for 7 matches by the Football Association for using a racial slur about teammate Son Heung-min. Benteke, who has also been fined 2.2 million rand, around £100,000, was charged by the FA in September after comments made while appearing on TV in his home country of Uruguay. The 27-year-old will not return to domestic action until the 26th of December. Then in netball, Spar Proteas coach Jenny van Dijk says that upcoming national championships will expose new talent and be a feeder to the Telkom Netball League. This year's tournament will see clubs from different districts across the country for the national title at the Ellis Park Arena from the 2nd to the 7th of December. And Van Dijk says that she is happy that this competition allows local and rural districts to showcase the unearthed talent that they possess. In cricket, Alice Capsey has been called up to England's T20 squad for the upcoming series in South Africa. After her initial omission having been a surprise omission from the original panel, the 20-year-old joins up with the group today following a couple of minor injury concerns within the squad. England are playing 3 T20s and 3 ODIs before a single 4-day test on the tour of South Africa, which begins on the 24th of November and it runs on until the 18th of December. And Capsey has not scored more than 25 in any of her last 5 T20 internationals and was run out for a single in England's dismissal 6-wicket loss to West Indies on the 15th of October. Then in tennis, retiring superstar Rafa Nadal says that he will not be distracted by emotion as he aims to help Spain win the Davis Cup in the final tournament of his illustrious career. Nadal will retire from tennis after representing his nation at the men's team event in Malaga. Spain play the Netherlands in the quarterfinals tomorrow, but it remains unclear if the 38-year-old will be fit enough to play a significant part. The former world number one has played only 7 tournaments this year after battling various injuries over the past couple of seasons, and definitely would want to bow out with a bang. So it'll be interesting to see how he's going to do it for Spain. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Okay, interesting. And I'm very interested about those football transfers. And as we get to that's a free transfer. That's why it can happen now, right?
Yeah, he's a free
just
agent.
So that we got, because someone said, how can there be transfers now? Okay,
Because
now
he
we
was
know
a
that.
free agent.
All right, perfect. By the way, there's been comment about what's the Man United guy? Ericsson, probably leaving at the end of the season. Oh, yes, and someone reminded me to say, by the way, today's the first day proper of the new Man United coach training. So, could it be the most significant day since Alex Ferguson left Man United? Another may say, come on, just don't, just lower your expectations, okay? More to come, the sport in an hour.
If we have rights, shouldn't we also have opinions? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
MasterChef's salty voiceover guide to mispronunciation. Today's word, finale. Origin, Italian. Pronunciation, finale. Meaning the last part of a series, commonly mispronounced as
Final.
as if you are discussing your matric results. Example.
I can't wait to see the final results of MasterChef.
If you insist on saying final, it's okay. Watch the grand finale of final on November 23, 8:30 on S3. MasterChef, things are about to get salty.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Okay, let's get to the numbers with Makwe Masilela, the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, you've got local and global markets in a moment, but let's start with Astral Foods' yearly results.
Yes, Ashraf, afternoon to you and to the listeners. This is a poultry producer. They released the stellar results with revenue up 6.4%, profits before interest and tax increased by 281%, and their profits as headline earnings per share up 245%. But Ashraf, bird flu remains a major risk. Water supply disruptions are of concern. Constrained consumer spending is a key influence when it comes to market conditions, and selling prices under pressure due to competition. And we've seen with the market participants are starting the week looking forward to VDS, which is an AI bellwether results. But locally, we will be looking at our October consumer inflation, September retail sales, and our latest scheduled interest rate decision for the year. And on the day that the US dollar is stable, the rand is firmer and probably benefiting from the S&P approving our January reform agenda, raising the outlook on SA rating from stable to positive, and the rand also benefiting from firmer commodity prices. And market participants are eager to hear who Donald Trump will pick as Treasury Secretary. Oil prices edged up after the fighting between Russia and Ukraine intensified over the weekend, although concerns about fuel demand in China still weighing. Brent crude is up 2% at $72 a barrel, and following a drop last week, yellow metal is up as the rally in the dollar slowed. We see gold is up 1.7% at 2,607, platinum up 2.6%, and global markets are mixed, but the local pulse is up 0.6%, with our resources doing most of the heavy lifting, and the rand firmed almost 0.7% against the US dollar, is now 18.06, 22.8 against the pound, and 19.09 against the euro.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Makwe. We'll connect again tomorrow, right? By the way, an update on what's happening at Stilfontein. So that the on-site authority, in fact, there's a tweet from the South African Criminal Justice, which is RSA_CJS, right? And it says the on-site authorities and community rescue teams have received correspondence from underground illegal miners. And translated in English, it says, we need ARVs. People need them here, please. Okay. So that's the one point. It's a plea. There's also a response now from the SAPS.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. Night Talk, Monday to Thursdays, 10 to midnight.
Is there a general culture that encourages police officers to seek mental health support in the police, or does it get to really dire circumstances before they seek such support and services?
I think is what we are raising, that it should be made mandatory that each member who has been exposed to a traumatic situation must be subjected for observation. Remember,
does that currently not happen?
Yes.
Is that currently not the case?
It's not the case. It's optional. It depends how the member feels. It depends what others see on a member. The member goes on shootout, they go on robberies, a very traumatic accidents, no one take care of them.
Tulani Nsele is with Pop Crew.
This is Oliver Dixon on SAFM. All podcasts can be downloaded on safm.co.za. The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Lots of comments about the sponsor shops, I can tell you, and that interview with Operation Dudula. In the meantime, the Northwest Community Safety MEC Wessels Morweng had a press conference today linked to what I just said earlier on around the ARVs, right?
And the sending of the ARVs, we'll recall that we have interim court order that was issued on Saturday that requested that we need to give the necessary medication that will ensure the safety of life. And if that ARVs is one of the requests that is being done, we have indicated that it will be done in a very coordinated manner. They know where to go, where the team is convening, where they will give those ARVs that will go down underground for the safety of, or as the emergency rescue, food and medical that was requested. And the sending of the ARVs, we'll recall that we have interim.
Okay, let's get to some of the callers who want to raise some of the biggest issues on the day, and that really is it. What moves the National Pulse? I know what moves it today. Let's talk about Operation Dudula. Tando's got a view in Eastern Cape. Hi, Tando.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead. What's your point?
Yeah, I keep on hearing you asking what's the pulse. And I think I try to feel the pulse of the nation. I feel it's dead. And it is deadening in terms of the onslaught that is, carried on into our country by the people who are in charge, the people who come from elsewhere. And when I look at it, I listen most of the time to SAFM, all the time actually. I only tune in TV late at night, but I listen to SAFM. And I don't hear the narrative within this realm of foreigners, and that actually there's an agenda. It might sound conspiratory, but I see an agenda here because the people who come to the townships and populate it and do all the business, they're actually Muslims. And nothing is mentioned about Muslims of South Africa who actually bring other Muslims from other countries, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Somalia, and they bring them here. And all these people have got this background of Al-Shabaab, Taliban, and all that.
So when you say there's a conspiracy and this narrative, so we don't have enough time, but just tell me, what do you think is the narrative and who is driving the narrative? If you can do that in 30 seconds, please.
Muslim agenda to take over the world, for one thing. Okay, I might sound like the Christian rights extremes, but there is an agenda here. And because the Muslims of South Africa wouldn't come and trade themselves in the township. Of course, we go to them as people in the township. But now to have cornered the township economy, they bring in all this because these ones have got nothing to lose. They come from Somalia, they come from...
All right, you're repeating yourself. I hear you. You're repeating yourself. Maybe it's a conversation we should have. I hear that. I mean, just by the way, I mean, the question is, what makes you think that South African Muslims actually have the power to galvanize all these people from all different countries to come and work in townships under some big agenda. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying what gives you a suggestion that they have that power. Tando, thanks for that call. You've put that on the agenda. Ernest in Nelspruit. Go ahead, Ernest.
Hi, Ashraf. First-time caller.
Thank you for joining us, man. Make it regular. Go ahead.
Yes. Yes, my pulse is racing.
Yeah, well, why?
Okay, all right. I've been listening to, obviously, this issue of the foreign-owned shops.
Yeah.
And, okay, point number one, I hear there's a lot of backlash because the president has given 21 days for registration.
Yeah.
I feel when you're doing registration, they're going to check your documentation and all that. So the fact that someone is illegal will not be able to register. So I think that falls away.
Yes, I mean I concur. Okay, next point.
Okay, and then the next point is I don't think any business person in their right mind would purposely poison their own customers. I think there's a lot more going on there that needs to be looked at. For instance, I think the toxicology reports from Soweto came through, and there was a point about a certain rat poisoning, and I don't think spaza shops are the only people that use rat poison. I think even people in their homes would obviously want to control the rats because you definitely would not get a scenario where you would only have rats in one place. Usually when you've got
all right, Ernest, I'm going to move on. I think you've made your point. Well, I think to a large degree I agree with Ernest to say, like, it's not in a spaza shop's interest to try and kill off their own customers, shrink their customer base, making sure that if they kill off their customers, it's so easy to find out where the poisonous food came from when there's like one or two stores, spaza shops in a township. Why would you want to do that? I think what it possibly means, right, is there's been a lax in terms of the checks and balances around safety. I think that is an issue, and it could be from the spaza shops, the entire chain of spaza shops, to the distributors that distribute to them, to everybody else. There's been this laxity, and that comes from a position of maybe the South African authorities not being hands-on to that, as they haven't been hands-on with so many things in our country, and we know that. So that could well be closer to the truth.
Gada, one word to describe EFF is crisis. There is a crisis in the EFF now. They don't want to admit, Julius Malema doesn't want to admit that there is a crisis in the EFF. Now one of the leaders in our Tambo is attacking Mbuyiseni Ndlozi on a public platform again, that he is silent. How can he saying Ndlozi is silent when he's attacking by his own leaders and his own organization? There is a crisis in the EFF. Thank you, Gada.
Thank you so much. Well, interesting one. Should Mbuyiseni Ndlozi himself issue a public statement that he's either attending the national conference or not attending? I mean, do you think that he needs to do that? Or, I mean, if you had to advise him, what would you advise him? Talk and confirm his position? Or don't talk and just leave it like it is? What do you feel? I'll get further. I want to just check with Keys if there's a few more comments. We're going to get to the voice. We'll get to some of the callers just now. Right. There's even more thoughts on the EFF.
Hot water. EFF hot water is in hot water. That is how I can describe them right now. And I don't see them get more than 5% on the next elections. Thank you so much. It's Qonqo Shibasa in High Flats, Ekopo.
Okay. Hot water. What about the MK?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I don't know how someone could say that the MK party is going to be the progressive political party of the future, because basically you would be taking the country back to the leadership that actually destroyed this country. So, yeah, if you don't learn from mistakes, you're bound to repeat them. Mark from Cape Town.
Well, interesting. I hear your point of view, Bob. Many may concur with you. So we chat later on to the person who made that statement, and I'm talking about Tessa Dooms at 5:10. Listen out for that.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and the SAFM team. Well, one word to describe the state of EFF. To me, I have a phrase, not a word. I told you so. That's my phrase to describe this, the status quo in the EFF. I told you so. This is Mlamuli Ndlovu in Devon. Thank you.
I told you so. Okay, got that. Get me further comments. Let's talk about it. Tessa Dooms coming up after 5 o'clock. Do not miss that. Remember, she has made the point, and to just emphasize what was said, she tweeted about the point that the MK is the future of progressive politics in South Africa. What does she mean by that?
Bafana are fueled up to display a top-class brand of football to triumph on home soil, while the Bright Stars are going all out in their hunt for victory away from home. This is match day 6 of the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. South Africa versus South Sudan on Tuesday, 19 November at 5:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 3 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, let's focus on personal growth after all of that, and we do this every Monday, right? Let's talk about, I think, a very important issue, the power of a positive mindset. Whatever you believe, you become. Really? We'll find out why. Dr. Nozim Joli is with me, professional and personal development coach. Good of you to connect. You are now connected very much so to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, Geda, and SAFM listeners. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, so do you believe this? Whatever you believe, you become.
Yes, I do believe that. I have done a lot of research that we are the co-creators of our reality.
But is
and
it,
how that
is it always the case?
It's always the case. Actually, we're all born with a powerful subconscious mind that's more powerful than any man-made computer. And that accepts our thoughts as inputs and our beliefs also inputs. Therefore, whatever we think about all the time eventually becomes our reality. Let's take, for example, in our country, you have a situation where women are at the bottom of the ladder. And the black people, when it comes to poverty, unemployment, they are at the receiving end. But the problem is that because we don't understand how the mind works, the more you worry and complain about your state of poverty, the subconscious mind, like a computer, it does not judge. Whatever you think about all the time is what is going to manifest from the universe, and that becomes the reality.
So you're saying even if circumstances mitigate against you, and let's go back to the most obvious one. Apartheid South Africa, the vast majority of people, black South Africans, could not vote. They had no stake in the economy. They had nothing, okay? At that point in time, what does a person like that, who's a victim of that circumstance, tell himself or herself?
Actually, this is deeper than that. These limiting beliefs are part of centuries of social programming. Let's take patriarchy, which oppresses women and sees them as inferior to men. That has been achieved through social programming, that from the day a child is born, they are being prepared for their position in society. If it's a boy, they are being prepared to be leaders. If it's a girl, they are being prepared to be subordinates to men. And then when it comes to the race issue, the same social programming has been used by making black people believe their problem is the color of the skin. This color of the skin has nothing to do with anything, because the subconscious mind, which is like a computer, is the same in everyone. But as evidence is being shown that when you see poor people, they are black, and in the mind of a black person is maybe they are right. Blackness is the problem. That's not the problem. It's just brainwashed social programming.
Okay. Now, I think we could have a conversation like this for half an hour about just, where does the problem start and small. But and so practically, if we look at today now, a person listening to us, and I mean, this is why we're talking to you about personal growth, right? So how do you suggest people listening to you right now, wanting to hold on to some form of way of growing themselves, what is your advice to them? What should they be practically doing?
Firstly, they must focus their minds on positive things that they want to manifest in their lives, not to worry about negative ones. And two, beliefs. If we believe we're all created in the image of God and there's only one God, then we all have the capability to achieve greatness. And the third element is the emotional state. When you're always angry, you emit negative energy. Negative energy always attracts negative life experiences. All these three things, if we pay attention, we can manage them.
Okay, now how do you pay attention and manage those when the reality for some people is their lives are against them at that point in time? For example, a mother losing her child, like today, for example, how do you tell that person, manifest what you believe and it will manifest itself? How do you tell that person that when they've been evicted from one place, from one country because they're of a different tribe or color or ethnicity, at that point in time, how do they turn that around?
Well, to turn it around, you have to start believing that you are destined for greatness, that you are always connected to the Creator through your subconscious mind. So it's a shift in the mindset. And to accelerate the process, you can use affirmations, such as I'm destined for greatness, until you believe it, and you'll start to see results that match your belief.
But I'm going to argue a point with you, and I'm supportive of the belief part, but I'm going to still say, destined for greatness, how does that person who is in the worst space possible switch on to say, it's okay, I'm destined for greatness?
Well, in that case, we have to acknowledge that bad things do happen. But the important thing is about having faith. That is not the end of the world.
And you have any examples to share of people who've done just this?
Well, I mean, right now I can't think of that. But from my experience as a black woman who grew up in South Africa, when I learned that I am the master of my destiny, I affirmed and affirmed until I achieved a lot of things, which in the previous mindset where I believed I was a victim of apartheid, I could not have achieved. And now my experiences become at a level where I can feel that I'm a co-creator of my reality because I pay attention. When negative thoughts come, I say next and don't entertain them because I understand that negative thoughts attract negative experiences in my life.
We call the feature personal growth, and like to think that people listening to you agree, disagree, but the plan is they can effectively personally grow. So thank you for your time, Dr. Nozi Mjoli, who is the author of a book that's just been released called The Power of a Positive Mindset. Whatever you believe, you become. Okay. I want to become a champion. I'm serious about it. Let's get the news. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. DA threatens court action over Eskom tariff hike, and the G20 should focus on climate change. Good day to you. The DA's deputy provincial leader in the Western Cape, Jordan Hill-Lewis, says the party will explore all options, including litigation, to mount pressure against Eskom's application to energy regulator NERSA to approve a 36% price hike from April next year. The DA picketed in Cape Town outside the venue where public hearings are underway. Hill Lewis, who's also the Cape Town mayor, says the increase in tariffs that Eskom is asking for is unaffordable.
I hope that NERSA listens to sense and listens to the submissions that we make this morning. And of course, we will be going all over the country for these public hearings. All DA-led governments will be participating to send that message loud and clear that on behalf of the public, we reject this increase completely. However, if they do go ahead with it, we will have to consider every available option, including legal recourse, because it's just outrageous and totally unfair.
Telkom says it's concluded its first phase of job cuts. Last year, the company announced plans to cut its workforce by 1,800. Telkom announced its results for the 6 months ending 7 September. It reported strong growth in revenue, up 1.9% to 21 billion rand. CEO Serame Tsakobong.
We have embarked on a journey as one Telkom to ensure that we drive a key reshaping of BCX. The first phase of it was the Section 189. Unfortunate, but it is part of restructuring and reshaping BCX to ensure that we focus on your higher margin and lower cost businesses. And that first phase has been executed with speed.
The Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, Dion George, says he hopes that the G20 in Brazil will also discuss climate change as it affects developing countries. He says developed economies must be transparent in terms of funds given to developing nations. George was speaking at the COP29 Climate Change Conference in Azerbaijan.
South Africa is very clear that there needs to be a discussion on a new climate financing model. We are going to be the president of the G20 next year, and we are going to carry on that conversation because we believe we need to talk about the global financial architecture that's not working for the developing economy countries like South Africa. So the finance discussion will carry on going after COP ends into the G20 and then obviously to COP 30 as well. So it carries on going.
Accused number 2 in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, Bongani Ntanzi's denied knowing singer Kelly Khumalo, according to the confession statement said to be made by him. He fingers Meyiwa's former girlfriend Khumalo as the alleged mastermind behind the killing. Ntanzi and 4 other accused are on trial in the High Court in Pretoria for the 2014 murder of Meyiwa. Addressing lead investigator Brigadier Bongani Gininda, Defence Counsel Sipho Ramasepele says Ntanzi will also tell the court that he doesn't know some of his co-accused as alleged in the confession.
Accused number 2 will deny that he personally knows Ms. Kelly Khumalo and does not know who ordered or who paid for the killing. If it was a contractual killing, if it was a robbery gone bad, he does not know any of these details.
Because that's what contained in his statement. He does say he doesn't know her, but he is aware, according to these exhibits, that the contractual order of the killing of the deceased came from Ms. Kelly Khumalo. So to say he doesn't know her, I don't have evidence that proves that he knows her, so I agree with that part.
The trial of alleged underworld gang bosses Jerome Boyson, Andre Nordia and several others has been postponed until tomorrow in the High Court in Cape Town. The matter was set to resume today, but a number of issues prompted another postponement. Accused numbers 9 and 13 were unable to attend court proceedings after one of them was taken into custody for an unnamed reason, but has since been released. A trial is open in Turkey of dozens of people accused of involvement in a scam in which newborn babies were transferred to other hospitals for profit. The BBC's Warren Bull has more.
This case has aroused deep anger in Turkey. Prosecutors say the operators of the network made profits through daily social security payments for each baby sent for intensive care treatment. Some of the health centres used, it's claimed, were not adequately resourced or staffed, contributing to the failure of care for the newborn babies. The criminal operation only came to light when the mother of a baby who died sent a letter to the authorities last year. The start of the trial had to be delayed when the families of some of the victims were prevented from entering the Bakırköy courthouse in Istanbul.
Top story, the DA's deputy provincial leader in the Western Cape says the party will explore all options, including litigation, to mount pressure against Eskom's application to NERSA to approve a 36% price hike. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khus.
In sports this summer, 4 Springboks nominated for World Rugby Awards, and Keegan Dolly joins Tears Galaxy. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Bedfordview has a stationary vehicle reported near Van Buren Road. Grayston Drive eastbound in Sandton is slow moving towards the M1 highway. The N1 northbound in Midrand has a crash reported after Allendale Road exit, and the N1 northbound in Pretoria slow moving towards Stormfall Road exit. In KZN, the N3 eastbound in Pietermaritzburg is queuing towards Market Road. You are to expect delays through Prospection area. That's due to traffic diverting from the N2 southbound closure, and expect delays through Isipingo due to vehicles diverting from the N2 southbound closure. In Cape Town, the M7 checks Havel Drive southbound queuing towards the R300 highway. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road exit. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the M5 southbound slow moving towards the N2 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.7 FM in Cape Town.
Back-to-back Women's T20 World Cup runners-up, the Proteas face England. They both want to walk away from Buffalo Park with big smiles. What a summer without cricket. This is the first Women's T20 International Contest, where summer cricket comes alive. South Africa clashes with England on Sunday 24 November at 2 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and reports on various SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Our role must be to seek to build a better world.
SAFM invites you to our annual public lecture, delivered by former Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor. The theme for the lecture is 30 Years of South African Freedom, reimagining South Africa's democracy, achievements, challenges, and the road ahead in protecting our democratic gains. The lecture will take place on the 21st of November 2024 at the Birchwood Hotel and Conference Center. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
Today, I'm part of seeking to build a better South Africa.
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
We have had so many comments about the state of the EFF, and the one word that best describes the EFF, there's not one of them that's complimentary. There's one or two that says stable, by the way. Some of them are tweeting, not just WhatsApping. But you can do both. You can WhatsApp and you can tweet. If you WhatsApp, it's text or voice note form 0614104107. To call in 086 0002032. There's also lots of comment or commentary around the issue of Stilfontein and the mines there. That just certainly will not go away until things settle down one way or the other. And what about the spaza shops? And positions taken of significance, but the conversations we've had earlier on, right? And even that, we've had many, many comments about that. So give me your thoughts, if you like, on that. Still to come, we'll chat in the winning feature. We'll chat to the attorney, Eugene Opperman. He's one of the winners of the Social Justice Awards in terms of his contribution to society through just that, social justice and law, and looking forward to that. And then the Women in Wealth 2020 Summit. We'll talk about that. That's been hosted effectively by the Graça Machel Trust. That comes up shortly. Let's, however, get to talk to Tessa Dooms. Now, she tweeted, and this is the tweet. It says, MK is the future of progressive politics in South Africa. I repeat, MK is the future of progressive politics in South Africa. There's been many people who have given a thumbs up for that. Others have been critical. Either way, the conversation, to loosely quote Tessa Dooms, is blown up. There's been so much response about that. She's had to explain herself from what that original line may well have intended. So we thought, let's get Tessa on the line and she can explain herself once again. Tessa, good chatting to you. It's been a while. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. Didn't think we were going to be talking about a tweet.
Well,
here we are.
Well, I suppose it will, and then the implications of it. So maybe first things first, help us explain what did you mean when you say MK is the future of progressive politics in South Africa?
So, firstly, it was political commentary. And when I do political commentary, I'm commenting on what I see in society and what I think its implications are. And in the post-GNU, post-elections space, the MK has certainly gained traction. It has gained momentum. It has gained more of a voice, even than it had before the elections. And importantly, it's been able to shape its narrative. And one of the strong parts of its narrative is that the MK says that it's progressive. It pronounces on itself as progressive. And this is doubled down on in many ways. First, it was the Progressive Caucus. And especially when the EFF is part of a progressive caucus and other parties are part of a progressive caucus that MK is in. All of those parties are signaling to society the MK is progressive. And again, whether we all share the same meaning of progressive or agree with it, that was not what I was commenting on. I was commenting on the fact that the MK party is putting itself out there as progressive and is being legitimized as such. I mean, when Floyd left and joined the MK party, people spoke about his progressive politics and what it gives legitimacy to the MK's claims. And so that was the first thing that I was pointing out, that the MK is cementing itself as being progressive in the way that it is shaping the narrative. But the second one is that I was saying that we must think about what the implications are for the future. And people have said, well, you know, by the definitions we know of what it means to be progressive, and the definitions we know about, the textbook definitions, the global definitions, MK has these conservative values, conservative politics. People cite the traditional leadership aspects. People cite the way in which they engage with the Constitution and wanting to change it, all of those things. And what I'm saying is that with the traction that MK is getting at this point, and the way in which it is posturing, whatever it says progressive politics is, if it leads into the future, it will lead with that definition. It will have the ability to define and redefine progressive politics on its own terms if it continues as it is. And I think that there's a lot of evidence to show that the MK is galloping ahead in ways that most people in society didn't expect.
Okay, so do you think that many people picked up on the fact that, well, I'm saying the fact about what they perceived as you saying that the MK party is progressive, and therefore you had to explain yourself that you're not saying they're progressive, you're saying they're the future of progressive politics, which are two different things. They sound very similar.
Yes, and I didn't proclaim on whether they're progressive. I'm making a comment about where they are positioning themselves and what that says about the future of progressive politics. What we need to reckon with in South Africa today is that we have had a hiatus of deep ideological debates about what ideas mean. We throw around left and right and center and all of these things without real engagement. And so that means that people can take those terms and they can make them their own. And I think progressive politics, particularly in South Africa, is going to be a contested terrain in terms of what it means and who owns it. I don't think that there's a unitary definition. I think, and I think we must all be clear that when we say a term, even the left or the right, when you say those terms, not everybody hears the same thing. And especially in a context like ours, where we are conflating many things in terms of how ideological standpoints are put together, right? So the MK will say they are pro-poor and pro-black. And they are saying that is juxtaposed to the status quo. So they can craft a narrative that says that in itself makes them progressive. They're saying they're anti-capital, for example. Now, you can look at the things that you say don't make them progressive, and they will argue with you about the things that they say do make them progressive. So there's a debate to be had about whether MK is progressive or not, and we haven't had that debate. MK has gone almost entirely unchallenged. We ask them, what do you mean when you say you are progressive? They've not had to answer that question as much as I have in the last 48 hours, to be fair.
So perhaps you can help us answer this one. Firstly, what's your loose definition of progressive? And then maybe you can help us answer, and it's a good starting point, is the MK a progressive party?
So I think there are two parts of progressive politics. One is values, and the other is the economy, right? Progressive politics has traditionally been anti-establishment politics. It has been, and especially considering that establishment politics has always been about elite power, it has been about capitalism, especially in the last few decades. And so progressive politics in an economic sense has been about anti-capitalism in a sense that you want economic justice for people. We want equitable societies. We want societies where the most marginalized are brought in, included, and treated fairly. And then there's the social values part of it, which is also about social justice, which is, again, an equitable society where people's human rights and human dignity is protected. And we are pushing back against norms of patriarchy, of racism, all of those things that have been embedded in the establishment from the colonial era onwards. And that's progressive politics for me. Okay. Whether the MK fits that definition or not, I think is debatable. I don't think it's a wholesale answer, because I do think we must debate the merits of it, because I think as a political animal, it shows itself to different people in different ways. So different people will have different versions of that. But either way, what MK is doing is it is cementing the narrative that its version of progressive, of whatever it regards progressive to be, is the thing that people should follow into the future, and that's what we are contending with.
Okay, it's interesting you say that, because, you're right. Some may say, Zuma himself is the establishment. Some may say he's patriarchal. Some may say he's very, very traditional, which may go against the grain of what we would call, what you may call traditional, or rather progressive, right? But having said that, you spent a lot of time in your tweets explaining the word, politics is about perception. Explain that in linking to what you just spoke about now.
Absolutely. I think one of the great lessons for me this year and the lead up to this election is how much perception matters to people, right? And I'm going to use a US example because I just find it a striking one. Donald Trump, billionaire, failed billionaire, whatever he is, probably one of the elitist people in the world, has emerged from this election in 2024 as a working class champion. Working class people from across racial lines, geographic lines, voted for Donald Trump because they believe that he is going to change things for the better for the working class. Now, you may ask, where did they even get that idea? Because if we watch the election footage, the upcoming, it wasn't even coherent most of the time. But it's the perception that is created is the one that he is pointing out where the problems are on the other side, and therefore positioning himself as on the side of the working class. That's all that matters now, is the positioning, is the perception. So the facts start to matter a little bit less because the perception starts to overwhelm them.
And if the perception convinces voters to vote for that person or that party, then that's all that matters, right?
Absolutely. One of the words that we've stopped talking about in politics is the word propaganda. And, it's a word that was made very dirty through, rightfully so, through the Nazi period. But really, propaganda is a part of the political game, as it were, to build narratives and convince people of those narratives. And propaganda does not rely on the truth all the time. Does not rely on the facts all the time. It relies on convincing people of narratives and even changing the truth or changing the facts to fit the narrative that you want. And there are political parties in this country that are incredibly good at that. They're incredibly good at building narratives and positioning. And it is those perceptions. Who can forget the era of when the word white monopoly capital suddenly meant something when it didn't mean anything a day before that. That is about perception building. And I think that there's a dismissiveness about MK that I think is problematic.
Okay, tell you what, I'm very keen to move away from the perception part around the reality of where the MK positions itself and maybe where the ANC positions itself and the DA. I've left out the EFF for now for obvious reasons, and I'll get to that right after this.
Okay, let's get this recipe right. Switch to S3 at 7 p.m. Add 1 scoop of mushindiki. Check. Mix in team green pepper and team red tomato, featuring 2 chefs and 2 contestants. Check. Blend in a limited budget per team and a mystery ingredient to add a bit of spice. Check. Set the timer for 20 minutes and voila, there you have it. A fresh episode of Ready Steady Cook South Africa on S3 every weeknight at 7 p.m. Channel your inner Salt Bay with Ready Steady Cook SA, Monday to Friday at 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the toothpaste so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does every electrical company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampa on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Speaking to Tessa Dooms, we'll wrap up this conversation. Of course, it was started on the basis of a tweet that she started saying the MK is the future of progressive politics in South Africa. So, Tessa, let's move away from perceptions to fact in terms of where parties are positioning themselves, right? So, where do you see you're right. I mean, a year ago, we would not be speaking about the MK. Well, they didn't exist. But even as late as about 2 months before the election, it's like, these guys are just noisemakers, right? They're not noisemakers anymore, aren't they?
No, absolutely not. And in fact, I've heard too many times since the election that the MK is just another Cope or another Gang. And those are just categorically untrue things. Just in terms of numbers, the MK has outperformed both of those parties extraordinarily in terms of organizational plan. But the biggest thing that they have over Cope, and if you remember the Cope days well, Cope never actually had a deeply ideological message. It never had a message that distinguished it from the ANC, because remember, its entire premise was that it was a better ANC. And so it was going to embrace all of the things the ANC embraced, but it was just going to have better people.
Which is, by the way, something that Kamala Harris, many have argued about her election campaign as well, by the way, right?
100%. And what makes MK different is that MK is trying to distinguish itself from the ANC. And it is saying that this version of the ANC is a establishment regressive version. They are actually saying that is the neoliberal bastion, the thing holding us back as black people. And we are the progressives because we are going to fight for black people's rights. That's what the nub of what makes MK different is that the MK is building a narrative that tries to distinguish itself from the ANC. Because remember, even within the ANC's ranks, and you were asking where the ANC positions the DA and so forth, there are people in the ANC itself that say that the ANC has moved to the right. Yeah. That the ANC has moved closer to neoliberal policies, closer to capitalism, closer to values that are not traditionally ANC. And MK is riding on that, saying, we are the ones who have maintained the traditional ANC. Now, what's interesting about this is where the Constitution is. Because the DA, for example, is a constitutional party. It believes in the Constitution. And many people who are progressives will tell you that part of the reason why we are a country that is founded on progressive values is because of the Constitution. But I make the argument that actually we have not had conversations about ideology and where people's values really lie, because the Constitution has given us a lazy way out. So we just go, because we all have this Constitution that realizes progressive socioeconomic rights, therefore we're a progressive country.
Okay.
But I'm not so sure that everybody's on the same page about those things, and MK is leaning into those kinds of sentiments as well.
Okay.
So I just think that the ANC was positioned as the progressive party, and especially because of the Constitution, and MK is challenging that.
Okay, many may say then the formation of the GNU is a godsend to the MK narrative. We don't have to answer that because I think that's another conversation. Maybe just the last thing, just for now, in 30 seconds, Tessa. So, do you see yourself in the way the MK party has positioned itself? It's positioning itself well enough from moving from party official opposition, which they are, to a government in waiting, and if they do so, how much of a strength or weakness is Jacob Zuma, considering his own position about being progressive and anti-progressive in terms of his own track record?
Well, I think that MK party is bigger than Jacob Zuma, and I think that the fixation around Jacob Zuma, erases a lot of the building work that other people in the organization are doing in terms of constituents. But I think the 2026 election is going to answer that question for us, because the strength of the MK in 2029 is going to be based on whether they can build strong constituencies across South Africa outside of KZN, and they won't need Jacob Zuma for that.
Okay, that's where we can leave it. That's another tweet, I would think, Tessa Dooms. The MK party is bigger than Jacob Zuma. Appreciate your thoughts, your comments. You certainly got us all thinking, from facts to perceptions to progressive and what is not progressive. Much appreciate your input, Tessa. In fact, let's move on now to talk about the Women in Health, or rather, no, let me rephrase, Women in Wealth Summit.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
Okay, so the Graça Machel Trust has gathered women from throughout the continent. In fact, they're in Johannesburg for a 3-day Women in Wealth 2025 summit that started today. Let's get an insight into what happened with Katlego Legodi, who's the SABC News economics reporter. Katlego, good of you to connect with us. Tell us what we can't see.
A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to our listeners and viewers at home. Well, what has been happening is that we see the Graça Machel Trust really working with women on the continent. One thing that they've done here, Ashraf, is to commission a study that would look at the challenges that women have really been experiencing on the continent in terms of the barriers to wealth or barriers to just actively participating in the economy. Well, we see this study just give us a bleak picture in terms of what has been happening on the ground in terms of the continent and how women have been moving in various spaces of the economy. And there's still a long way to go here, Ashraf, in terms of what we see this study give us, because today we see the Graça Machel Foundation, or the Graça Machel Trust, really led by the former First Lady, giving us a sense of the work that they've been doing on the ground. And this study is just looking at some numbers. They're working at ensuring that in 4 years' time, there's about 10,000 entrepreneurs collectively from the continent expected to generate about $1 billion in value and about 200,000 jobs within the next 4 years. So we see them just in this study, just basically revealing that there are still prejudices, there are still gender pay gaps, there are discriminatory lack of access to finance. We see this at 56% compared to 73% of their male counterparts. So here they're just basically looking at closing the gaps and the barriers.
All right, and here's the point: how much of that is, how much of the summit is reflecting and effectively lamenting the problems of these divisions that you just alluded to, versus being very practical about how women in particular and Africans in general will actually grow their wealth to the benefit of themselves and of course their families and the countries that they come from.
This summit really looking at unleashing the economic power of women, and they are all in agreement here that for us to understand and to push for interventions here would be just taking stock of where women find themselves. So you have, countries, Uganda, you have Kenya, Mozambique, South Africa, all just engage in panel discussions in terms of where they are in the interventions here, looking at issues of policies and the likes. And most of them are just looking at capitalizing on the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, whereby they're looking at ensuring that they are ready, their products are ready, and they have support and adequate policies that would back them from one country to the next in just, more or less intervening here and capacitating women. So we see this study that they commissioned coming through with recommendations, and what they've been doing as well on day one here is to see whether these recommendations can be inclusive of all the countries on the continent.
Okay.
See them coming with recommendations. One of them here being that really governments must do away with discriminatory laws and develop a national financial inclusion strategy using gender disaggregated data that will inform how they move one country after the other.
I'll leave it at that. I think that's a very important last point to make. Probably it's an issue we need to talk about over the next couple of days as well. I think it's that important. Maybe speak to some of the speakers too. Katlego Lehori, the SABC News economics reporter, reflecting on the Women in Wealth 2025 Summit, driven very much so by the Graça Machel Trust. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Greg Hobbs.
Quick look at the headlines. Eskom's proposed hike in electricity tariffs being opposed by various stakeholders as well as members of the public. The Mineral Resources Minister's labelled illegal mining as a high risk to the country's economy. And leaders of the G20 group of the most powerful countries are arriving in Brazil for their annual summit. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The N1 southbound in Fairland has a stationary truck reported before Bears Nodia Drive exit. Van Buren Road in Bedfordview is queuing on the ramp to the N3 south, and the N1 northbound in Midrand has a crash reported after Allendale Road exit. In KZN, the M7 westbound in Pinetown has a crash reported after the Belleville Road exit. The N2 northbound is queuing towards Umhloti exit, and Chris Hani Road westbound queuing at the N2 highway. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound is slow moving towards the N2 highway. The N1 inbound has a fault fire reported after Sable Road, so watch out for smoke reducing visibility. The N7 Jakes Havel Drive southbound slow moving towards Voortrekker Road, and the M5 northbound is slow moving towards Kuburg Interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, to me, let's talk about the Springboks.
Yes, 4 Springboks received recognition for their consistent performance during the 2024 season by being nominated for the World Rugby Awards, nominated for the prestigious Men's 15s Player of the Year, South Africa's most capped player of all time, Eben Etzebeth, alongside Cheslin Colby and Peter Sef du Toit, who's a former winner of the award. The Bok trio are up against Kenan Doris of Ireland, then Bok Flyhalf, Sasha Feinberg Mgomezulu was nominated along with Emmanuel Faye Waboso and Jamie Osborne and Wallace Sititi for the Men's 15's Breakthrough Player of the Year award. In football, TS Galaxy have announced the signing of former Kaizer Chiefs midfielder Keegan Dolly. Dolly has been a free agent since leaving Chiefs at the end of last season, and he signed a 1-year contract with option to renew. Meanwhile, South Africa will look to seal top spot in Group K of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers when they host South Sudan for their final match set for Cape Town Stadium tomorrow at 6 p.m. Now, South Africa booked their place at the next AFCON in the previous round of games, with South Sudan's 3-2 win over Congo last week Thursday handing Bafana and Uganda a ticket to Morocco. Now, Bafana then went on to defeat the Cranes 2-0 in Kampala the following day to leapfrog to the top of the group and guaranteeing that position with a win over South Sudan in the mother city will be their objective tomorrow evening. And finishing top of the standings will have the additional benefit of giving Bafana a better seeding for the AFCON group stage draw. In terms of the tickets update for tomorrow's match, 29,000 tickets have been sold for Bafana's clash with South Sudan at the DHL Stadium in Cape Town so far. So if you're in Cape Town, please go and support Bafana just for the sake of it. Meanwhile, still staying with football.
You could say, I'll be there. I mean, just say, I'll be there. Come and say hello. You, that is. And maybe
you
they'll
understand?
fill up the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in Cape Town. But a statue of Harry Kane has been unveiled at the Peter May Centre in London, where he grew up playing football. Now, the piece is said to have been completed back in 2020, but sat in storage since then, and it was unveiled today, and it features Kane sitting on a green bench while holding a football on his thigh. Then in netball spot, Proteas head coach Jenny van Dijk says that the upcoming national championships will expose new talent and be a feeder to the Telkom Netball League. Now, this year's tournament will see clubs from different districts across the country vie for the national title at the Ellis Park Arena from the 2nd to the 7th of December. And Van Dijk says that she's happy that this competition allows local and rural districts to showcase the unearthed talent that they possess.
The SPA National Championships is really an important tournament for us, the National Championships, because of the fact that everybody is playing in their district teams, which gives more players opportunity to play and a lot of more levels and a lot more representation. So for us during the TNL, we play in provinces. So for those provinces, there's quite a lot of districts within the provinces, which means that not everybody within all the districts get opportunity to showcase their talent. But in the SPA National Championships, you've got all the districts and all the levels, and you don't just pick up all the strong players from all the strong university systems and structures and the dominant provinces. You also get to have a look at the more local, rural districts' talent as well, and it's such an important part of our development.
In tennis, retiring superstar Rafa Nadal says that he will not be distracted by emotions as he aims to help Spain win the Davis Cup in the final tournament of his illustrious career. Nadal will retire from tennis after representing his nation at the men's team event in Malaga. Now, Spain play the Netherlands in the quarterfinals tomorrow, but it remains unclear if the 38-year-old will be fit enough to play a significant part. And just before I say goodbye, with news just coming in, Ronan Williams has made the final 5-man shortlist of the CAF Interclub Men's Player of the Year for the CAF Awards, and also Mamelodi Sundowns have made the final 5-team shortlist for the CAF Men's Club of the Year. So a big congratulations to them, and hopefully they take it home.
I hope it's not a vote again. Okay, just say. You know what I feel about votes, right?
I hear you.
All right, more sports tomorrow.
Yeah, more sports tomorrow. Ke nna Tumeng Kgapele. Modimo ke o.
Who says talking never solves anything? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Weeknights on S3 are anything but ordinary. BBC Primetime brings you the best of British television from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. With crime boss the Dean behind bars, the outlaws are moving on with their lives until one of their own returns with a deadly secret, hurling them back into mortal danger. Outlaws Season 3, Fridays at 9 p.m. Then, 3 fishing fanatics embark on the ultimate extreme fishing trip to attempt to catch some of the most elusive, hard-to-catch fish across the globe. Fishing Impossible, Fridays at 10 p.m. Channel your best entertainment with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is back. After receiving hundreds of entries last year from South African writers of different ages and ethnic groups sharing their stories, now the time is yours. It's your story. You decide. SAFM invites all writers to explore the medium of sound, the theatre of the mind, and to create a 1-hour radio play in English. Get writing now and submit your play before the 3rd of February 2025 for a chance to win one of 3 large cash prizes. For more information, visit safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Okay, let's talk about the markets. Of course, Jimmy Muyaha hosts the SAFM Market Update from 6 to 7 every night and is a curtain raiser, I suppose. Jimmy, good chatting to you as always. Let's talk about, well, what's moving markets today.
Good evening, Ashraf. Good evening to the listeners. It seems as though it's going to be another data-heavy week to look forward to this week. We got CPI data out of the US last week, but this week we're getting CPI data out of South Africa, out of the Eurozone, out of the team in the United Kingdom as well. But we're also getting interest rate decisions. We've got an interest rate decision from our own Fed or our own Reserve Bank. We've got an interest rate decision from the People's Bank of China. We're not expecting a lot of movements from the Chinese interest rate decisions, but we'll look into all of those permutations. It seems as though the data is going to be driving a lot of the sentiment this week. We have started the week off positively, and we'll get into those movements in a second. What we have coming up on the show is we're going to be looking at the new tax rules being proposed by National Treasury for unit trusts, collective investment schemes, unit trusts. The taxation on that from a National Treasury perspective could potentially be different, and we're going to speak to National Treasury around that and try and understand what the differences could look like and how those differences, most importantly, could impact you and I as investors in these unit trusts and how they'd affect our investment portfolios. Then we've got a conversation with Astral Foods as well. They gave us an update on their full year that was the year ended September 2024. We're going to speak to the company's CEO around that. We're also going to speak to the company's CFO at WeBuyCars around their numbers. They also reported numbers for the similar period. We're going to speak to WeBuyCars and see how they've been faring. Obviously, that business having spun out from Transaction Capital, it was always going to be something interesting to see how the business would fare on their own, and we're going to look at that and see how the year was for them. And then because it's Monday, we've got a personal finance segment on a Monday. We're going to be taking a look at understanding severe illness cover. We've looked at terminal illness cover in the past on the show. We're going to look at severe illness cover, what the differences are there, what kinds of cover you can put in place, what kinds of severe illnesses are covered. We're going to speak to the team at Crew Invest around that and try and get a better understanding of that for our personal finance feature. Before we get to that, as I said, markets have been moving nonetheless. It's been a good start to the week. I haven't been able to say that a lot lately, especially for our own equity markets. But if we look at other equity markets that would have been trading as well today, the ASX in Sydney in the green, about 0.1%, Hong Kong up 0.75%, mainland China down 0.1%, and the Nikkei in Tokyo down 1%. European markets were a bit of a mixed bag, with the FTSE in London up 0.25%, but the DAX in Germany down 0.33%, and the CAC 40 in France kind of flat, down about 9 basis points. Our own local markets had a really green day, green all round. Financial stocks up 0.1%, industrials 0.5% up, and resources 1.7% in the green. As a result, the all share was up 0.2%. The top 40 was up 0.6%. So it's a good start to the week there. If we look at some of the platinum, palladium, gold and oil pricing on the commodity side of it, all of those seemingly coming back to the party. Platinum and palladium, the biggest gainers there. Platinum up about 3%, palladium up about 5%, both back towards the $1,000 level, but palladium just shy of that, $994 at the moment. Platinum $969 an ounce. Brent crude $72.32 a barrel. Not too concerning there, considering the rand is 0.2% stronger at 18 rand and 2 cents. So we might not have fuel price increases. Too soon to tell, but we'll definitely keep an eye on that. Gold price back above $2,600 an ounce, $2,611 an ounce at the moment. And if we look at some of those currency movements, one US dollar, as I said, will cost you 18 rand and 2 cents at the moment. One British pound, 22 rand 76 cents, back below 23 rand. 1 euro, 19 rand and 4 cents, hasn't broken that 19 rand yet, but one Australian dollar is now 11 rand and 67 cents, whereas it was closer to 11 rand 80 last week at some point. So looks like we are on the right track. We're starting off the week right. I don't want to get too optimistic about it, but I am hopeful.
Okay, and then just to end very quickly, as always, your masterclass. What's your masterclass on today? You've got interesting acronyms. In fact, ROE versus ROC.
Yeah. So return on equity versus return on capital employed. When you look at these things from a shareholder perspective, from an investor point of view, if you put money into a project or into a particular investment, you do expect a return at some point. Now, when you look at your return on equity, it typically measures the net income of the company versus the shareholder's equity. That can be something that we often use as a benchmark to say, how much am I getting back for what I'm putting in? But that does take into account that there are debts that we can take on as a company. So a company can go and take out a large amount of debts in the form of loans, and that's going to skew that kind of figure, which is where something like a return on capital employed becomes a better, more preferred ratio for using, because that looks at how much capital has been employed, both debt and equity, into a particular project, and how much has been earned in terms of earnings before interest and tax as a percentage of that capital employed. So one is slightly more accurate and takes into account things like debts and liabilities. One doesn't, and one is a more preferred measure, yeah.
Okay, and now we know. Now you enjoy your show 6 to 7 this evening, followed by sport coming up after 7. Thanks for that, Jimmy. Let's get on some of the biggest issues, and there are so many big issues. By the way, that Tessa Dooms podcast, we have it up like I think ASAP. It ended by saying Zuma is, rather the MK party is bigger than Jacob Zuma, which really you need to listen to all of that. There's so much that's come from there. Magdalene in Bloemfontein, go ahead. What's your point?
Afternoon, Ashra.
Afternoon, yeah.
Number one, MK will never be a progressive party for South Africa, never. Not from what we experienced from Jacob Zuma. Number two, South Africa right now is in need of, on the speech of Trump, to say the foreign nationals, please go back to your countries with your expertise, with your professionalism, and go and repair your countries. South Africa is in need of itself to revamp itself with its own expertise and its local community and economic development. We don't need any president who is going to cover up for the foreign nationals. We, the South Africans from all the provinces, townships, we need to come together and stand up like Dudula and say no to the foreign nationals. Don't hate them. We want our economy back. We want to revamp for our own kids, so that I think President doesn't know the labor pain. He doesn't know the labor.
Okay, I got that. You've said a lot of things. I mean, many people have saying the president's been diplomatic. Others are saying he's completely wrong. I think you would be into that category. Magdalene, thanks for that. I think this story is not going to end today, and you know that, and I certainly do as well. Matebang in Florida, go ahead.
Ashraf, you know what? I agree with the lady, the dealer movement.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, we supported President Cyril Ramaphosa in 2017, but now he's failing us. And if President Cyril Ramaphosa can break the law, he knows that these people, like the lady says, have to come to a country, and one has to get something like has to have something like 5 million rent to open a business, and he does not take us seriously. Maybe when we fought against the National Party, we thought like the ANC will be on our side, but now that the ANC is for the foreign nationals, maybe we have to stand up against the ANC, because I can ask any magistrate, any judge in this country, and say, I mean, should we agree with the president when he's breaking the law himself? Maybe we have to stand up and do what we did to the National Party against the ANC.
Okay, got that. Remember what Jacob, not Jacob Zuma, Bishop Tutu said before, long time ago. Matebang, thanks for that call. Right, there's plenty of WhatsApps, and I'll tell you what, we struggle sometimes to get through, or I must tell you that, just so that you know that it's like we don't care. We care deeply about it, but it's a balancing act between calls and interviews and WhatsApps, and we do struggle. I'm apologizing in advance, but let's try and get this through.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195, and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Weeknights on S3 are anything but ordinary. BBC Primetime brings you the best of British television from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. With crime boss the Dean behind bars, the outlaws are moving on with their lives until one of their own returns with a deadly secret, hurling them back into mortal danger. Outlaws Season 3, Fridays at 9 p.m. Then, 3 fishing fanatics embark on the ultimate extreme fishing trip to attempt to catch some of the most elusive, hard-to-catch fish across the globe. Fishing Impossible, Fridays at 10 p.m. Channel your best entertainment with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up. S3.
Our role must be to seek to build a better world.
SAFM invites you to our annual public lecture, delivered by former Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor. The theme for the lecture is 30 Years of South African Freedom. Reimagining South Africa's democracy, achievements, challenges, and the road ahead in protecting our democratic gains. The lecture will take place on the 21st of November 2024 at the Birchwood Hotel and Conference Centre. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
Today, I'm part of seeking to build a better South Africa.
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Okay, we end the show as always with the feature we called Winning, right? So who's winning today? It's either a person, it's an institution, it's a business, it's a team, at whatever level, they're all winning. And today it's the turn of the attorney, Eugene Opperman. He's an attorney, mediator, director and founder of Opperman's Inc. Right now we speak to him because of what happened about just over a month or so ago, in fact. And then I'm talking about the Social Justice Champion of the Year Awards put together by the Center for Social Justice, which is based at Stellenbosch University. Let me just tell you up front, I was myself being part of the adjudicating committee that came up with the 3 winners that ultimately won these awards. So it's an interesting thing to finally talk to Eugene Opperman. Eugene, appreciate your time, and, well, you are certainly a winner.
Oh, thank you, Ashraf.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, in terms of the award you won was called the Bridge Builder Awards, right? What did you understand by having been chosen as this bridge builder?
Sure. Number one, it was quite a humbling experience because, you know what, I've been an attorney for the past 24 years, and I specialize mostly in maintenance matters, domestic violence, and all matters relating to children. And you know what, it has been a passion of mine for the past 24 years. And I've been to most of the maintenance court all over South Africa, and I've seen the struggles. And what I've done there is, you know what, because I'm so passionate about helping vulnerable women and children, I created a Facebook group called Child Maintenance South Africa. And at this stage, we've got about 55,000 members. Which is astounding, which is so much. But you know what, I would have wished that it was only 2,000, because it just speaks to how much need there is for education and for assistance, specifically with regards to maintenance. And that is my passion. So I've created the website, I've created a web or Facebook page for that, and that is my community service that I bring to the people, to the vulnerable women and children out there, to educate them on their rights and how to approach the maintenance court, because it is quite daunting for women to muster up the courage and then go to maintenance court just to get there and feel disappointed because the matter gets delayed. And what they don't know what their rights are and how they can navigate the whole system for their advantage, and obviously for the children.
And what got you to start to set up this in the first place? I mean, I understand what you do and I understand the need, but something must have given for you to say, this is what I'm going to do.
You know what? Probably standing in a queue, waiting for your case to be heard, and then seeing how maintenance are actually being neglected in courts. That was my tipping point, where you can actually see, and these people stand, they look at you, and they have this expectation of claiming maintenance because the father, for example, doesn't pay maintenance. And just my heart's just going out to them just to see, but is there a way that I can assist them? How can I make it better for them? And that was basically where my passion started off with, and it grew. And then, expanding on that and helping them, having a child there, taking off my attorney gown, my robe, and put it over a child because, he's cold. The normal public don't see that. And that is heartbreaking to see how these women actually struggle in navigating the whole maintenance system, the court system.
So how has this changed things for them?
You know what? The maintenance system, or the Maintenance Act, is actually a beautiful piece of legislation, and it was given the teeth to support the constitutional rights, the rights of the child, which says, the best interests of the child should be at the forefront. But it's a noble approach, but we see that it is so remote, the efficiency of the courts and the gap between the intent of the Maintenance Act and the implementation has actually just become an absolute maze of frustration for so many people. Have things changed? Yes, there are some new legislation in the pipeline, but at the end of the day, it is still a frustration for so many people. Due to the inadequacies, mostly of the court systems, and also, the fathers misusing the system. They just disappear. We live in South Africa where you can't find the people because, they don't have fixed addresses. They stay in informal settlements. How do you find them? We don't get any assistance from the police. The court investigators that are actually appointed to that, they need to cover such a vast area that,
I can just imagine. So let's go back to where it all started for us. That is, when you were then named the recipient of when you were told, in fact, that, by the way, you're the recipient of the Bridge Builder Awards that is linked to the Social Justice Champion of the Year Awards, that's linked to the Center for Social Justice, that is driven by Professor Thuli Madonsela. You thought what?
I thought that was it was a humbling experience. It was totally unexpected. And my daughter actually nominated me because she also works in the same firm that I do, and she sees what passion I have for helping people. But it was a humbling experience, and it's so great because the work that we do, when it's unseen work, out and we don't boast about it. We don't say, I've done this and I've done that, and I've done so many pro bono cases and I've helped so many women and children, and to get recognized for it, it was really, Ashraf, it was a real humbling experience.
Well, pity I was not there this year. I've been in the previous 3 years, but certainly skipped it this year anyway, right? Otherwise I would have met you in person. Now, how have you then, couple of weeks now into this award, been able to leverage of it? Because, awards, you can always talk about others deservedly that should have won. But once you win it, there's an affirmation and an endorsement of the work that you do that you can leverage if you do, and the media publicity that comes with it, that even gives it further strength to continue doing even more work.
You know what? I've been invited to do quite a number of presentations and guest lecturing, but my feel was, I'll do that. That's 100% fun, and I'll leverage on that, and I'll point in on that. But mostly, I just go about doing my day-to-day work that I do and continue helping the women, because that's what I do. It's not for the accolades. It's not for the award. It's not for the shine. It's helping people. It is a deep-rooted passion to help the women.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What then is your personal purpose?
Say again?
What then is your personal purpose?
My personal purpose, I'm a firm believer that legal knowledge should be free. It should be made available. It should be understandable to all. Because if you have knowledge, then you would have access to justice. And to link those two is my purpose is just to give out as much information that I can, and to educate the people and explain it to them in a language that they do understand. Because the legislation is so full of legal jargon, and to I wouldn't say dumb it down, but yes, to make it understandable in layman's terms. That's my purpose, to bring education and knowledge to the public out there that needs it.
And I think you're right. If you have knowledge about the law, you'll have then access to justice, which often people, not often, I mean, clearly many millions of people don't have because they just don't know, they just don't get it. So well done on the work that you do and being the recipient of the Bridge Builder Awards at the Social Justice Champion of the Year Awards for 2024. You're in great company and you know that. And long may you continue doing the work that you do and solving the problems of injustice in our society.
Thank you so much, Ashraf.
There you are. That's Eugene Opperman from Eugene Opperman, Opperman's Inc. Attorneys. And there you are, a winner, a champion in his space, certainly getting you to think that, hey, maybe perhaps you can be best in class and assist other people in a big way indeed. That's the show. We'll do it again tomorrow. It's the National Pulse at 6 o'clock. Here's Greg Coase.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Stiff opposition to Eskom's tariff hike and the G20 summit to get underway in Brazil. Good evening. Eskom's proposed hike in electricity tariffs has been opposed by various